In a faraway land, a group of students are seen gathering as their instructor shows them a magic trick. Then there is a boy hiding in the shadows, who closely observes everyone excelling and improving their magic skills. It is already given that the most valued thing in a prestigious magic academy is none other than a talent for magic itself. So in that case, those students who don't possess any magic skills are usually referred to as losers. However, contrary to how everyone expected it, this particular boy, who doesn't have any talent in using magic, has somehow survived the harsh and competitive environment that he is in. For him, it doesn't matter if he can't use magic, since hard work will eventually pay off in the end. On another day in the regarded magic academy, student mages listen attentively to their teacher as he discusses how the smoke is produced. Since the teacher wants to see how far his students have come in learning about the lectures he has been giving, he went on to call for one named Will Surhole. As soon as Will heard of his name, the sweat in his body immediately poured out due to nervousness. For a good minute, his soul literally left his body as he couldn't even move or speak. This caused his teacher to get impatient, and as a result, the teacher went on to shout for Will's name once more. This time around, Will has no choice but to immediately head to the front since his teacher, Professor Edward Surfins, is already furious. So if he still wants to be part of this class, he has no choice but to do as Professor Edward asks for. As soon as he got to the front, Will just stayed still in front of the catalyst with seemingly no plans to work with it. As a result, Professor Edward went on to ask him what was going on, considering it was the same old test, and all that he needed to do was use the catalyst to make fire. Now that the pressure is on for Will, without any choice, he went on to try to cast a spell onto the catalyst, in hopes that he'd make a fire appear one way or another. However, after trying once, Will failed to do so, causing his classmates to laugh out loud at his failure. While the others makes fun of him, one of his classmates, Colette Rowell, feels bad at what's currently happening to Will. On the other hand, Professor Edward can't believe that a student of their honorable school doesn't know how to use even basic magic. However, it seems like Professor Edwards already expected nothing less from a learner, and nothing less from Will. While Professor Edwards is talking, and one of the students named Scion Owlstar suddenly cast the magic out of nowhere, causing a loud boom sound to echo through the halls. Immediately, Professor Edward tells Scion to abstain from such actions, which Scion apologizes to immediately. He then went on to explain that it is just that Will doesn't seem to be feeling well, so he thought he could help him somehow. With that being said, seeing that Scion really feels confident in himself, Professor Edward went on to use Scion and Will's skills as an example that in the world they are in, magic is supremacy, and it is absolute. Magic is also authority and power, and the heroes that they looked up to are magicians with great power. That's why in this magic academy, what they value most is magic potential. So even if one has the knowledge about it, but can't use any of it, they are still considered incompetent. Someone who is not worthy of this place where the wise are trained. Therefore, Professor Edward wants to discourage Will from pursuing an impossible dream and leave the school immediately. However, since Will wouldn't do such a thing at all, the only way for him to win credits is by defeating those weak monsters in the dungeon after class. Knowing that Will was going there any moment, Scion went on to pick on him once again. Helplessly, Will just listens to all of Scion's insults since he doesn't have any power to fight back anyway. Then out of nowhere, Colette went on to defend Will, asking Scion to stop. Scion then went on to ask Colette, who is a student prodigy in the academy, why is she trying to support an incompetent being like Will? Colette then went on to tell Scion right on his face that Will is much more gentle than anyone in the academy. The fact that he tries his best harder than anyone else in the school makes him worthy of respect. That's why Colette warned Scion not to make fun of Will ever again, or else things will get messy. However, her statement just made Scion laugh, since for him, no one becomes a good magician just by being gentle and striving, much less one of the 5 supreme wands. After Scion realized that he didn't need to waste his time on such an incompetent being like Will, he eventually went on his way. As he walks away, he tells Will that he should just listen to Professor Edward's advice and leave the academy immediately. Colette then goes on to tell Will that he shouldn't listen to those bullies. However, it seems like Will already knows to himself that he is indeed incompetent and untalented to be part of such a prestigious school. Hearing Will say those words made Colette furious, so she went on to push him, saying that he should stop saying those things to himself from now on. While Colette is scolding him, Will can't help but be mesmerized by how beautiful the day is. Colette, who also slowly noticed it, stated that it is indeed warm and light, indicating that the Supreme Wizards and 5 Supreme Wands are indeed holding up the sky. Long ago in ancient times, a man was said to have been imprisoned in the darkness not knowing the sky. Apparently at the time, the world was being threatened by the invaders of heaven. But they were 5 wizards who rebelled against the invaders. They defeated the invaders, sealing them in heaven and restoring peace to the world. And they were then called as the 5 Supreme Wands. Today, that powerful title is still inherited, a title of great honor that any magician would dream of at least once. So, call it wonders if the Ice Princess is watching over them. With a wide smile on his face, Will went on to say that the princess was indeed watching them from above their window. A flashback then flashes in where Will and a girl named Alfaria are talking about becoming one of the 5 wands. Little Will and Alfaria then went on to promise to get to the top together. But Alfaria was the real deal. She's a true genius for magic that would become one of the 5 youngest wands in history and would climb to the top of the tower, while Will was not only a simpleton, but also an incompetent. However, there was no way that he would allow himself to forget that promise. As a result, he's still making a fool of himself to try to be by Alfaria's side. Fast forward, as Will entered yet another class, he immediately got called a fool. His Wagner sensei then started scolding him again one after another. However, it seems like Wagner is just concerned that Will go back to the dungeon despite the fact that he knows he can't use magic at all. There's a big chance that he'll be killed inside, considering he only went there alone. Will then went on to explain, saying that it is the only way he can get credits. As a result, Wagner decided to just give Will the credits he needed so that he didn't need to risk his life all for the sake of a couple of points. Seeing his teacher signing the documents made Will smile with happiness. However, Professor Wagner went on to ask him if he was still planning to be one of the 5 wands. If he does, the first thing he needs to do is climb the tower and advance to a higher course. For this to possibly happen, Will needs literary and practical knowledge and real experience, added to a large amount of credits in 3 subjects. However, since Will can't use magic, there's no way that he can get the necessary credits in the practical field that easily. It seems like Will is well aware of that fact, which is why he has been working hard to earn his experience credit instead. However, for Wagner, trying to climb the course using only the dungeon is completely impossible. Even so, Will doesn't lose hope that he will reach his goal one day. So Wagner went on to tell him that before he thinks about becoming one of the 5 wands, Will should first think about how to graduate. But Wagner understands that Will needs the credits considering he lost some on the last exam with Professor Edward. So to help, Wagner went on to inform Will that she got a report that a Baskerville, a type of vicious monster, was spotted on the 6th floor of the dungeon. Immediately, Will hugs his teacher so tightly for being so supportive of him. But lurking in the shadows, Scion is eavesdropping, and hearing that there's a Baskerville on the 6th floor, he immediately decides to catch it himself so Will can be expelled once and for all for not completing the required credits number. As Will reached the door to the underworld, he seemed so excited to fight with this Baskerville. Along with him is his pet Kiki, whom he will use to navigate the said Baskerville. Meanwhile, somewhere in the same dungeon, Scion started a speech, saying that the academy doesn't need incompetents like Will, so he is asking his fellow friends to help him eliminate the monster before Will. That way, he will run out of credits and get expelled. However, it seems like one of Scion's friends is a bit worried if they're going to be okay all alone on the 6th floor. Hearing such a statement made Scion give the 2 a grim look. Immediately, the 2 went on to say that they didn't mean it in a bad way and were just genuinely worried. But despite his friend's worries, Scion decided to still go after the Baskerville no matter what. As they were about to start looking, the monster suddenly attacked one of them, immediately causing it to lose consciousness. The loud impact and screams alerted Will, giving him the hint that someone has already reached the floor and was being attacked. As Will reached the area, he is shocked to see that Scion's group is being attacked by an evil sentinel, a powerful enemy in every sense of the word. It is known that sentinels are supposed to live on the lower floors, so this made Will wonder why the lethal monster was on the 6th floor. As Will observes the whole incident, he notices that magic doesn't do much damage to the sentinel, since the level of difference is too big. Knowing that Scion is no match for this monster, Will decides to save his fellow classmate from danger. However, his intrusive thoughts went on the way, as he questioned if it was really worth it trying to save his own bully. At the back of Will's mind, Scion has always teased him so much, so there's that urge at the back of his mind that tells him that he should just run away and leave Scion and his friends to die. However, remembering what Alfaria has told him before, although he just wanted to be worthy, at least at this moment, Will wants to be as strong as a sword. Meanwhile, back at the academy, Edward rushes to tell Wagner furiously that Scion and his friends went on to the dungeon without authorization. Immediately, Wagner prepares herself to search for them. However, when Edward states that they are on the 6th floor, Wagner's worries fade away since Will is on that floor, so there's no need to look for them anymore. Going back to the dungeon, Will went on to fight with a massive one-on-one, with all the might that he had. As Scion witnesses the whole scene, he somehow can't believe his eyes, since he never expected that Will, whom they all call as worthless, actually knows how to fight with a sword. Meanwhile, at the teacher's office, Wagner also shows the whole situation to Edward, who also can't believe his eyes, as he never thought that Will was this strong. Wagner then went on to say that Will is actually a real dissident, which simply means that he possesses a mysterious power like all wizards. The strength of the dwarves and the perceptive ability to predict enemies' movements just by seeing them. Although there is no denying that Will can't really use magic, still, in this world full of magic, he is a unique warrior and the cut of his sword is mightier than thunder. After defeating the monster, Will immediately goes on a checkup on Scion, who also looks so defeated. Meanwhile, back at the academy, Professor Edward also can't accept the fact that someone who can't use magic can ever surpass a wizard. As a result, he dashes out of the room, all furious. After a good minute, Will finally arrives back at Wagner's office, looking happy that he is able to defeat such a strong monster during his raid. As a result, Wagner then gave him 10 points for his effort. With that being said, this story is a story of a young man who denied the world around him, a story of wands and swords. The next day during class, Wagner went on to ask the students what it truly meant to climb the tower. In the first instance, it seems to advance in class until they reach the top class, to reach the last level and to become one of the supreme wizards that reign this world. Basically, for a student to do so, they must be considered as upper class, or to simply put, the most important in the academy. There are two ways to advance to the superior class. The first is to create new magic, while the second is to get credits in the academy. There are very few who manage to advance the first way. Therefore, many students decide to advance using the second way. Though this power is rare, students who opt to do the second way don't have the certainty that they will graduate on time. So, for them to ensure that, they have to make up credits until they can't anymore, just like what Will usually does. After class, Will and Colette can't help but express how hard Wagner's class is, as usual. It seems like the professor forced them to take mock exams over and over again. But it seems like Will already got full credit for the class-written portion. So Colette doesn't think that is fair treatment from Wagner. Will then went on to explain that it is because, in the practical part, he was such a mess, but it doesn't mean that he can't strive to succeed. But remedial classes aside, Wagner is a good teacher. Normally, no other teacher would bother to help the students this much, which Colette can't deny herself. For her, teachers like Edward would never give the opportunity for students to make it up in his class. As they were both walking in the hallway, a group of students gathered in one place, with some boasting about how Scion defeated an evil sentinel without knowing that it was actually Will all along. As the students started talking about it, Scion somehow notices Will walking past the hall. The jealousy in his nerves started to rush in, so he went on to grab Will's collar, telling Will to stop making fun of him. This made Will stunned a bit, considering all he did was walk past the group. Realizing that he started unnecessary commotion, Scion immediately walks away, leaving Will alone. Meanwhile, at Principal Cardoron's office, Edward insisted that Will should be expelled immediately. However, it seems like the principal has no plans to do so, considering Will has already advanced to the highest class of the 6th year, so she doesn't see any reason for anyone to expel the young boy. Edward then went on to bluntly state that the academy needs wizards, not warriors. They don't need someone who overcomes magic without being even able to use it. However, for the principal, Will already has good credit in the written subject matter, and his point of view on magic is very interesting to read. So, even without magic, Will is considered one of the best students at the academy. After all, the world they are in doesn't just have supreme wands, since there are also magical engineers and healers in the community. Not to mention that one of the duties of the academy is to find and prepare a sage for when that day comes. However, it seems like Edward is so persistent in expelling Will, so the principal asks him to give the young man a test. Then for sure, Edward will discover the truth about Will. In cases that he fails that test, then Edward can do whatever he wants with Will. With that being said, Edward then went on to immediately start making the contents of his test. Meanwhile, Will together with Colette is studying in the library with Will fully focused on memorizing all the information about magical history. He is doing this so that he'll pass the classes on time, since if he drops a single digit in his credit score, he will lose his chance of advancing to the higher class. Besides, it seems like he also understands the feeling of the dwarves he is studying about today. For him, those foolish and brave warriors who kept advancing, even if they were against powerful mages, just showed what the true meaning of never give up is. With that being said, that is the reason why Will has to keep trying hard no matter what. Then out of nowhere, Edward enters the scene, telling Will to come to the practice field alone. There, Edward informs him that since he always keeps failing the practical exam, Edward will allow him to have some makeup classes. This made Will a bit confused, but he had no choice since this was just a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The test is for Will to hit Edward just once. If Will manages to pass the exam, Edward will give him 5 credits, but if he doesn't, he will be expelled. But the worst thing is, Will has no right to refuse. With that being said, Will goes on to fight Edward one-on-one, and Will can't deny the fact that his teacher is indeed a powerful one. Meanwhile, Wagner looks worried for Will as the principal allows her to witness the whole test. It seems like Edward has already cast 2 spells. The first is fire, and the second one is a barrier to repel Will's nasty attacks. Since Edward wants to defeat Will in one go, he goes on to use one of his unique magic, a series of overlapping snakes. Seeing this made Will mesmerized but terrified at the same time. As the spell landed a hit on him, Will started to think that he couldn't ever win this fight, if only he had a sword with him. Meanwhile, Kiki, Will's pet, started to feel nervous for his master, so he went on to panic, causing Colette to notice. As a result, Colette rushes to check if Will is alright. Going back to Will and Edward, Edward started to ask Will some questions about the lectures, with the hopes of discouraging him from fighting more. However, no matter how much Edward tries to, Will keeps on standing up again. So Edward asks why he is doing this, and Will's answer shocks him. Determined and wholeheartedly, Will stated that he wanted to be next to the one he loved. Hearing this made Edward furious, as the fight started to intensify, just right on time. Colette handed over Will's sword, causing Will to fight the best way he knew he could. After landing a few hits, Will eventually got Edward's approval, causing him to receive 5 credits. It seems like Will's definitive blow has overcome the magic. The next day, Will Surholt, the young and competent student, started off his day just like usual, delivering newspapers around the city. One of the residents named Donnan greeted Will a good morning, while also informing the young man that he would be expecting to see him at Gina's house later. Happily, Will states that he will be waiting for himself as well. As he hops onto the pile of newspapers lying on the ground, a headline about Alfaria immediately catches Will's attention. Seeing how Alfaria is doing her best in work, Will pushes himself to do better as well. As it turns out, Alfaria, the secluded ice princess, has created yet a new original spell. This makes her the only individual to have invented so many potions alone, with her having a total of 12 spells already in stock. With that said, accordingly as stated in the newspaper, the upper college has issued an order to the entire student body of the academy. The client, which is said to be the issuer of the edict, is none other than Alfaria herself. This information shocked Will a bit, but aside from that fact, Alfaria's gorgeous newspaper cover is what really made Will speechless. At the back of his mind, even now that Alfaria has already gone up the tower, her smile remains the same, just like the way Will remembers it. After finding out about the big announcement regarding Alfaria, Will immediately rushes to the Regarden dormitories where his friend Rosti is staying. Excitedly and without any hesitation, Will immediately asks Rosti to prepare magic items and tools for him. Seeing how happy his friend is, makes Rosti wonder what's with the sudden rush. Accompanied by a wide smile, Will excitedly states that the officials had already issued Alfaria's order, which is why he needs to go immediately to support the love of his life. Fortunately, the timing was just perfect for Will, since he doesn't have any classes scheduled for the day. So instead of slacking off, he decided to go to the dungeon to fulfill the order himself. His eyes sparkle as he talks about what the order is about. As it turns out, the order is to collect the ice cores of the Frostwalkers. It seems that a lot of them are needed as catalysts, considering the officials are even giving out rewards to students who help out with this matter. According to what Will has read, the target is situated on the 4th floor, so Rosti's magic items are essential for Will to clear the whole quest. Hearing Will mumble about the whole thing somehow amazes Rosti, as he never has met anyone who is more straightforward than Will ever in his life. So, as fate has it, it seems like Rosti has already anticipated this day to come, so he has already made some improvements to the previous ones he made for Will. Immediately, Will grabs the equipment, thanking Rosti for his undying help and support. However, before Will fully gets out of the room, Rosti wishes him a safe trip. In the words of their great progenitor, the Magic Queen Mercedes, everything stems from the dungeon. According to her, all children of magic should use their knowledge and wisdom to traverse the tower, turn the unknown into the known, and conquer it in the end, for everything is all connected. With that said, as Will finally reached the 4th floor, an empty space welcomed him as he was the first one to enter the dungeon early in the morning, or so he thought. As he goes deeper into the floor, the current state of the whole place stunned him, as things are already in full swing, which is something he wasn't expecting at all. Among the students present is Scion, who seemingly blew up all the Frostwalkers in one fell swoop. Seeing how Scion fights off the creatures, Will can't deny the fact that he is indeed kind of amazing. However, it seems like Scion is a little bit more bloodthirsty than he usually is. Since Scion seems to be doing well, at this rate, he will end up hunting them all down. So Will has no choice but to go deeper. Along the way, he comes across a monster who is about to unalive one of his classmates. Immediately, he jumps into action, saving a schoolmate whose name turns out to be Iris using his own sword. As they start walking deeper into the floor, Iris goes on to bluntly state that she is shocked to meet the unprecedentedly incompetent student Will, whom everyone has been talking about. This made Will feel a bit off. However, what really shocked him a bit was the fact that Iris addressed him as senpai. As a result, Will then went on to ask her why that is so. As it turns out, Iris is actually 2 years younger than Will. That's why the way she addresses him is a bit formal. However, Will can't help but wonder if Iris doesn't mind being with him, the incompetent student everyone is talking about. However, it seems like Iris doesn't get why Will would think of such a thing, considering he was the one who saved her, so there is no reason for her to feel bothered at all. After all, Iris sincerely respects those who are capable, even if they cannot use magic. As it turns out, Iris also came to the dungeon because of the Order, as she aims to help the Supreme Five Wands as much as she can. But above all, she also wanted to play a part in holding up the sky. At the back of Will's mind, what Iris said is no exaggeration, as they all don't know the real sky at all. It is known that what covers the world right now is a fake sky, a great barrier that the Magia Wenda, or the Five Supreme Wands, put up using their immense magic power. According to legend, when the barrier is broken, the world will be shrouded in darkness again, and the calamity will begin. As a result, the magic students will have to fulfill the orders, not simply because they admire the Magia Wenda, but because they believe that doing so helps in holding up the sky. Aside from that, as a turn of events, Iris also happened to meet Alfaria once before. She's able to talk with her about various things. That's why Iris decided to come to the dungeon by herself with high spirits. However, it seems like for hours, she still hasn't found a single Frostwalker at all. So, Will decides to find them using his senses, and a few seconds later, he's able to sense that there is a big fish up ahead. As Will rushes to grab this opportunity to catch what he is after, Iris looks so concerned knowing that he can't use magic, so how can he know something like that? So, Will went on to tell her that although magic is amazing, it isn't absolute. On top of that, Will also believes that even an incompetent such as himself can make up for his inability to use magic. With knowledge, wisdom, and experience, he can turn the unknown into the known. And just like that, a massive Frostwalker comes out of nowhere, shocking Iris to the bones. Before she gets squashed, Will immediately gets her out of danger. In front of them now is a Frostrex, aka the Frost King, known to be the strongest of all, just as Will thought. It is indeed a big fish. At this moment, Will and Iris have no choice but to face this giant monster if they both want to fulfill their mission. A Frostrex is known to be a high-rank species of Frostwalkers, a 5-over enemy of credit value 6, and is known to be the 4th floor's notorious monster. Since this is a dangerous fight, Will asks Iris to stay put as he will take care of things all by himself. However, it seems like Iris wouldn't allow him to do so, considering physical attacks won't work against a Frostrex at all. So, approaching it is strictly prohibited, as it is a dwarf slayer that freezes everything around it in an instant upon contact. The only way to fight it is by launching spells from long range, which Iris is good at. Knowing that it is impossible for Will to defeat such a being considering he doesn't even use any magic, Iris can't help but get so worried. But Will assures her that everything is under control since he has already beaten plenty of these guys before. As the monster rushes to attack, with its roar echoing through the whole floor, Will, with much dedication, went on to rush towards the monster as well. Using his slow rise technique, Will easily stops the monster in place. Then he went on to use the equipment that Rosti had been trying to improve for the past few days. Using the bombshells, Will ignites the whole place within seconds. It is known that Frostrex are weak beings against flames and bombs, so even without using magic, Will is able to take down the massive monster in one go. Through Taurus Nabarado, or the naval cord of the bombed beast, Will is able to make the monster's body explode. Seeing how good the equipment worked, Will can't help but smile at the thought that Rosti really did a great job inventing magic items such as this tool. Meanwhile, witnessing the whole scene made Iris speechless, as she had never anticipated that anyone could ever do such a thing. At this moment, Iris doesn't see Will as an incompetent student anymore. Between the rumors she has heard and the reality of the situation, she can't deny the fact that there's quite a discrepancy in the information, so she starts wondering how she should report this whole thing. After collecting so much core as they could, the two eventually headed back. As Will goes back home, Iris immediately goes to the Tower of Mages to report everything she has witnessed earlier. On her way to the head's office, she can't help but think that the ingenuity born out of the inability to use magic and the keen nose for the battlefield that's backed up by experience does differ so much. Seeing how Will fought earlier made Iris realize that he is certainly not a mage of any kind. but instead a capable warrior who might be stronger than most out there. As a result, she decided to render this crucial information to the Supreme Five Wands. Iris went on to enter the Supreme Five's throne room, and as a sign of respect, she went on to ask if they were in the middle of something. One of the five then went on to say that they were not at all, but it seems like they are in the middle of a perfunctory confirmation of the current situation, since if the barrier is breached, the world will be destroyed in no time. It seems like the kingdom doesn't have enough strength or numbers to put out a fight against the invaders from the heavens who are watching everyone from the other side of the sky. That's why the Supreme Five Wands need more superior types before the big war comes. The legends must not be allowed to come to pass no matter what. With that being said, they went on to ask Iris, who turned out to be a watcher, if ever she has found anyone useful that can help them with the whole matter. Iris then went on to say that she discovered an interesting talent during her observation of the academy. Without any hesitation, she went on to recommend Will Surholt to be accepted into the tower, which the Supreme Five Wands find interesting. However, it seems like the Supreme Five's opinions aren't aligning, so one of them went on to suggest that they should just worry about it later on, considering the Grand Festival of Magic will be held soon. With that being said, it wouldn't be too late to make a decision after seeing the results. This simply means that Will has to claw his way up to the top. This way, the Supreme Five will be able to see if he is worthy of it at all. Meanwhile, Elfaria, who is listening attentively, is looking forward to what's to come for Will. Out of the 12,000 total credits obtainable in the academy, 7,200 is the number of credits required to advance to the upper college, which is the absolute prerequisite to becoming a Magia Wenda. Both Scion and Collet passed the initiation exam, with them having 7,340 and 9,889 number credits respectively. Meanwhile, Will seems to be having a hard time doing so. Some of the students started laughing at him, saying that they couldn't even believe he was unable to use magic and couldn't even lay a scratch on the golem. But then they have already expected this to happen, considering Will is known to have been flunking all the practical tests since the beginning. And now that he only has 5,405 total numbers of credits, it is already apparent that he isn't even part of the average at all. As his other classmates start to pass one by one, Will just watches from afar. The other students then stated that they were all expecting that a bunch of them would advance to the upper college, considering they were all well trained and smart. The number of credits one has can be used as an indicator of that student's strength. So that means almost all students don't see Will as competent and deserving as the others at all. So at this moment, he has already given up on himself. Considering, let alone the upper college, he still doesn't have the 6,000 credits needed for him to graduate from the academy. And to make it worse, this is already his final year in the academy. After the evaluation, the other students then started to go on their way. Along the hallway, Will is able to hear some of his classmates talking about being scouted at the Grand Festival of Magic. So this makes Will realize that it is already that time of the year. While he and Collet are eating lunch in the cafeteria, Collet immediately tells Will that he has no choice but to catch the eye of the scouts at the Grand Festival of Magic, since this might be his only way to reach his goals. Since Will didn't get what she was trying to say clearly, Collet went on to say that she thought trying to advance to the upper college with only written and hands-on credits wasn't realistic. There have been cases of students being recruited on the spot and going up the tower, even though they had less than 7,000 credits. So Collet is certain that during this period leading up to the Grand Festival of Magic, everyone is excited about the prospect of turning things around in one shot. During the festival, it is known that the various competitions will take place with high mages from the tower observing, so that they can scout for talents. That is why Collet sees this as the perfect opportunity for Will to have the chance to advance to the upper college. All he needs to do is defeat students from the various factions in the tower, namely Torsius Fadge, Instia Valham, Erleaf Kanan, and Alvis Vina. In cases that Will is nominated for any of these factions, his admission to the tower will be guaranteed for sure. Although there is no doubt that the Supreme Five would probably pick someone with high magical powers, which Will doesn't have, there have been rumors circulating around, stating that the Watcher of the Talent Discovery Agency will show up at the Grand Festival of Magic and snatch the best talents away to the tower. At first, Will doesn't believe that there is such a thing as a Watcher, but little did he know that Iris, the girl he talked to the other day, will be his key to success. Collet keeps on persuading Will to join the festival, as this would eventually cause the other students to look at him differently. However, as Will remembers it, the last time he participated in such events made him notorious and it traumatized him so badly. That's why there is no surprise if Will decides not to take Collet's advice. Since it was already time for their next class, Will went on to tell Collet that he would be making his way already. But before he leaves, Collet asks if he wants to visit the dungeon after class. Respectfully, Will stated that he is working part-time at Gina's place, so he will be busy for the rest of the night. Fast forward as night bites, at the outskirts of Ulver Garden, Slumland Street, a bunch of people are seen gathering at Gina's place. There, Will is seen serving some tables as Gina cooks the orders. Some of the customers admire Will's dedication and strength, as he works jobs on the side while studying at such a prestigious school. Since some of the customers have also heard of the festival, they suggested that Will should participate since things might work out for him afterward. Will somehow froze a little, until Gina shouts at him to stop chit-chatting with the customers and work already, just like how his roommate Rosti is doing it. After quite a busy night back at the kitchen, Rosti then asks Will if the wages he gets working for Gina is enough, considering he can always ask Professor Wagner to help him. However, it seems like Will has already decided not to bother Wagner anymore, since he genuinely feels like he is already causing so much trouble for Wagner. Besides, he also went on to reveal that he has grown closer to the dwarfs, so there's no way he can easily leave them anytime he wants. Hearing this made Rosti amazed, as he never knew that Will had nothing but respect for the dwarves. A few seconds later, Will and Rosti's schoolmate Julius happened to pass by the restaurant and started to cause a commotion outside. Julius went on to insult the place and the dwarves non-stop. After seeing Will, things have escalated so much that the dwarves have no choice but to get themselves involved. As Julius keeps on blabbering some humiliating insults, Will goes on to ask Julius furiously to take it all back immediately, since for him, the dwarves also deserve to be respected like the rest. But since Julius and his friends are so arrogant, Will goes on to smash Julius's friend's head into the ground, shocking Julius. As per Will, the barbaric acts committed by him and the rest are more ignorant and make humans lower than animals than the dwarves ever could be. Seeing Will finally fighting back somehow made Julius excited, since this is the first time in a long time he has felt this insult. He went on to attack Will in every direction using his magic. However, in the end, Julius feels that defeating Will in such a place isn't enough, so he goes on to challenge Will to enter the Grand Festival of Magic as he plans to humiliate him in front of the spectators. Although he doesn't have any plans of doing so, since this is the pride of the dwarves that Julius has stepped on, Will immediately agrees to what Julius has asked for. Julius, who is full of himself, is seemingly sure that Will will lose his place in the academy after the event, so Will also states some conditions himself. In cases where he wins, Julius will have to apologize to the dwarves in front of everyone. Since Will has made his promise to join the festival, he has no choice but to hone his skills to be able to fulfill what he has promised to do. Now that the big day has already come, before Will enters the arena, the announcer states that everyone hopes by the end of this all, the players become the cornerstone that holds up the sky and repels evil. With the words of the progenitor Mercedes, the announcer stated that she hereby declared the start of the Grand Festival of Magic. For the first contest, a sky race has been held, with some students stating that by the looks of it, it seems like their lady Liana will be the winner in the end. At the back of their mind, this was already expected considering Liana is known to be the first place in the academy. Meanwhile, the Flame Faction scout, Lodge Holland, starts telling his comrades not to take their eyes off the various competition events, as they need to make sure they analyze each one thoroughly. After all, they never know where they might find promising talents after all. Now that the scouts have already mixed in with the crowds of spectators and are keeping a close eye on things, the academy's principal also notices that the tower is no less quick as well. After all, this is a festival that attracts mages from not just the tower, but also mages from all over the world. Now that the recruitment race for the promising students of the academy has already begun, for sure, everyone is now anticipating the best outcome there is. Iris, who's with the principal, then stated that she will now make her leave, considering she, together with the Talent Discovery Agency, has work that needs to be done as well. Moreover, she is also aiming to cheer on Will, who will be participating in the said games. Meanwhile, Sion's friends, who are not going to participate in the contest, have stated their best wishes for him. Sion, who actually has no plans of entering, had no choice considering Colette was the one who asked him personally to join the contest as part of her team. At the back of his mind, Colette has now finally realized that he is far more important than Will. However, little did he know that he would still be working with Will after all, since Colette has also asked him to join. Colette then went on to explain that the entry requirement for the crown attack is that the combined total of the credits the team members have must be at least 21,000. So the only way for Will to enter the event was to recruit Sion into the team. Knowing that Sion is definitely pissed off, Will immediately states his apologies for dragging him into this. However, it seems like Sion finds this absurd. At the back of his mind, why does he have to enter with an incompetent like Will? And why is he even trying to enter a high-level competition in the first place? Then, suddenly, Julius enters the room with an uncanny expression painted on his face. Colette then went on to inform Sion that there was a dispute between Will and Julius. That's why Will really wants to enter the crown attack that Julius is entering. Since Will keeps ignoring his queries, the furiousness on Sion's face is already evident. After a little while, the afternoon portion of the Grand Festival of Magic has finally begun. The play-by-play commentary will once again be provided by the announcer Mike Myers. As per him, the color commentary will be provided by the #1 most hated professor, a malicious and sly man who is termed as the Dark Serpent. Based on the description itself, it is already given that the announcer is talking about Professor Edward Serfins. With that already laid, Mike went on to announce that up next on today's main event is the Crown Attack. Members of the Fey Saints faction will now take it away. Using Magnetress Ringel, the members of the faction are able to create various playing fields, from a small volcanic zone to a more densely forested zone. Unlike the other competition events, Crown Attack is a team competition between 3-man cells. The entrants will start at the outer edge of the field, and then make their way toward the stadium, which is located in the center of the playing field. The winner will be the team that obtains the crown first. However, going to the center of the arena wouldn't be that easy, as the environment is not the only obstacle that stands in the player's way. There are a lot of traps carefully designed by the Academy's famed professors placed all over the playing field. Heading straight for the stadium using the shortest route possible is an option. Hindering the other team is also allowed. This is one of the especially barbaric and heated events in the Grand Festival of Magic, so there is no doubt it is going to be a veritable battle royale. With effective use of the 3-man cell and the ability to deal with unexpected situations, this is a battle-oriented competition with a focus on dungeon clearing strategies. The scouts pay a great deal of attention to this event, and the students who enter are all excellent. With that being said, the team members are now finally announced, with the 12th team led by Ignore Lindor and Julius Reinberg's 9th team being the joint favorites. While on the other hand, notable in a completely different way is the 6th team, which has the worst odds. Along with Scion, a potential winner, the team has Will the Incompetent. Seeing Will enter the tournament made his fellow students laugh, as this might probably be the most unexpected thing they have ever encountered so far. Now that the game is about to begin, the students competing are asked to get themselves ready. Then suddenly, Wagner finally notices Will in the lineup. Immediately, Wagner started scolding Will, saying that he should have just stayed out of the Grand Festival of Magic as much as possible. However, it seems like Will is already decided, since for him, even if he is laughed at by everyone, this competition alone is something he wants to win. With that being said, Wagner can't do much about it anymore, considering this is what Will really wants to do. After waiting for a good minute, the competition will now finally commence. Immediately, the teams rush inside, only for them to be confronted by the Golem Forest right off the bat. Now the question is, will Will's team be able to break through it, now that countless golems have become a veritable giant wall barring their way? Seeing Will dashing ahead made the audience laugh, as this is a one-man suicide attack. Aside from that, they know to themselves that there is no way that an incompetent like Will can defeat such a number of golems. At the back of their mind, a guy like Will couldn't even lay a scratch on them in their last practical exam, so there's no way that he will be able to fight head-on. Meanwhile, going back to Will, he seems to call for Call It, saying that he is counting on her to help him fight these creatures. Using her Bloodline Earth technique, Call It is able to support Will with his first attack. Everyone suddenly becomes speechless after witnessing Will finish the golems off with just one blow. Even if he can't use magic, it is not against the rules for him to beat stuff up using a gauntlet created from magic. With that being said, seeing Will succeed with just one blow has turned the events upside down. Everyone somehow finds it hard to believe that the first to break through the Golem Forest is the incompetent learner Will Surholt. Meanwhile, it seems like the bad blood Scion has been feeling towards Will starts boiling again. It seems like he couldn't forgive himself for allowing an incompetent to save him, as it somehow crashes his ego and pride. Being saved by an incompetent who can't even use magic is just a humiliating memory for a boy who has led a bright life so far. That is why he desperately did everything he could in an attempt to become even a little bit stronger. But despite all that, Will still manages to take the spotlight off him. That's why he will make sure not to let Will ever come his way ever again. In this crown attack where the teams compete over the crown in the stadium, the 6th team that is currently in the lead is entering the rocky desert zone already. As soon as they step on the territory, they are immediately welcomed by a series of attacks, which Will is able to repel with just one blow. With the help of Call It, Will is able to punch the hell out of the rocky creatures. As the loud boom echoes through the arena, everyone screams in excitement now that Will's team is able to break through the rocky desert zone with ease. Some are amazed, yet some are also speechless as they never expected that a failure like Will would be able to do such a thing. Some students then started saying that it may be because of Call It's magic. However, little did they know that in everything from detecting the traps to taking them down, those are the movements of someone who has immersed themselves in the exploration of the dungeon. Through knowledge and experience, wasted movements are eliminated, allowing them to break through obstacles on a reflexive level. After that brief fight with the rocky creatures, Will and the 6th team are now in the lead. Along the way, the teams are still in a hurry since the traps are not going off at all. it's going to be pretty brutal. However, the audience couldn't believe their eyes, considering Will's team is still holding on to the lead. To make it even more amazing, Will's team is also the first one to enter the stadium. Meanwhile, somewhere inside the stadium, Julius's team has been alerted that Will's team has pulled ahead, which means that there is a big chance they'll lose to that so-called failure everyone has been talking about. However, Julius doesn't worry much about it, since he already has a plan in mind. As the 6th team finally reached the last zone, Enchanted Forest, a zone filled with heaps of magical traps and guardians, everyone anticipated that this might be the team's end. However, right off the bat, the team immediately went on to activate a chain cycle, giving them an edge over the rest of the teams. Under the rules of the crown attack, the closer contestants get to the stadium, the more likely they are to come into contact with enemies. It is in this forest that everyone can start to see serious battles among the teams. That's why Will is planning to stay ahead of the competition and set up an ambush. If they can secure favorable terrain, then Julius's team will immediately meet their defeat. However, while on their way, Will suddenly senses an attack coming directly to him from behind. To their surprise, it was none other than Julius himself. However, this is no time for Will to overthink things, since rather than worrying, he must first need to switch gears. Although it is not as planned, Will has no choice but to engage with Julius here. However, before he and Julius can even start fighting, Sion suddenly attacks him using his fire magic. Everyone in the stadium was shocked by the loud impact Sion's spell had produced. On top of that, Collet is unsure as to whether Sion is targeting Julius, or if he is after Will as well. As Collet starts blustering about why would Sion do such a thing, Sion immediately tells her to shut up, since from here on out, he will start taking the compensation for all the time Collet has used him. With that being said, with his head held up high, he asks Will to fight him here and now. Will, who is confused at what is happening, asks Sion what is this all for. Immediately, Sion tells Will that he doesn't need some grand reason to beat up someone like Will, who's grating on the ears and an eyesore to many. Collet tries to stop the two from fighting, but it seems like Sion has already decided with it. To make it even worse, Julius then went on to join the fight as well. Will tries to stop Sion from fighting with him, since this is not the time for them to be fighting at all. However, it seems like Sion is very much decided already. Since Will has no control over the whole situation, he has no other choice but to face combat with Sion as he goes on to cast a spell, Lanza. As the loud boom echoes into the whole stadium, everyone goes silent as some of the best students of the academy become somehow interested in defeating the so-called incompetent student all of a sudden. Meanwhile, Collet, who somehow wanted to put a stop to this unnecessary fight, went on to contemplate that even though she needed to stop both Will and Sion from fighting as soon as possible, Julius now coming his way gave Collet a hard time, thinking of what she should do first. On the other hand, Will then starts to think if he really doesn't have any choice but to fight Sion. Now that one of the traps has been triggered, the fight between Sion and Will can't be stopped anymore. As the fight intensifies, the whole stadium is now in shock and in excitement as things go on in ways they had never expected them to. Although the 6th team had been making good progress, everyone couldn't believe that two of the members of the group were now fighting each other. This type of falling out somehow makes everyone anticipate what is to come next. To make things even more intriguing, the MC went on to ask Professor Edward what his take on the whole situation was. After all, no matter the reason, infighting within a team is completely unacceptable, considering that such things go against the very purpose of the crown attack. So there is no doubt that the 6th team will surely get marked down significantly by the scouts from the tower. However, seeing the reaction of Professor Edward, the MC can't help but get frightened a little, as the professor looks incredibly happy about it. Meanwhile, the student audience has also managed to notice something weird. As they scanned the screens, they were shocked to find out that there were so many Juliuses in every corner of the arena. At the lake and marsh zone, one Julius is seen defeating one of the groups. Moreover, on the other side of the arena, another Julius was seen fighting off some players at the small volcano zone. On top of that, some players are also defeated in a snapback at the Enchanted Forest on the north side of the arena. With that being said, the 12th team leader Ignore Lindor is amazed at the fact that Julius has done incredibly well these past few hours, as he never expected such a guy to have such an ace up his sleeve. On the other hand, back on the south side of the Enchanted Forest, the fight between Will and Sion keeps on intensifying, as Sion keeps on flashing out spells one after another. Using his skills and magical power, he went on to cast one of his deadliest techniques, called Sogulus Guardianus, a Firehawk protector. Since this is a charge by the Guardian, Will thought that if he cut off its wing and seized the opportunity to close in on Sion, he would have to destroy its core to stop it definitively. As Will tries to think of ways to fight off this monster of a spell, Sion keeps on ordering the Guardian Firehawk to excrete as much power as possible no matter what. So Will needs to think of other ways to fight it if he still wants to win this whole thing. knowing that the primary purpose of a guardian is to be a shield that buys time for chanting, but on top of that, it can also be used to launch attacks from other directions. So, seeing Sion cast such a spell just amazes everyone, including the professors, as they have never seen anyone have such incredible proficiency that is well beyond what a student should be capable of. Even Professor Edward can't help but be shocked by witnessing the whole thing. With that being said, there's no doubt that Sion has definitely gotten much stronger than before. Everyone knew that he had never been able to control his magic power with such precision before. However, it seems like Sion doesn't think he has improved a lot, considering Will hasn't shown his true skills yet. With that said, Sion then shouts at Will, saying that he was much better than this when he defeated the evil Sentinel back then. So why doesn't he show off his true capabilities now or never? However, it seems like Will doesn't see any reason for them to fight at all. So he asked once more, why do they have to fight all of a sudden? Since for Will, there's no good reason for them to fight each other at all. However, Sion takes this as an insult from Will, since after all, the ridicule heaped on him, after all the misery he made him go through, there's no way that Will doesn't resent him at all. So Will went on to say that of course he resented Sion so much that he can't tell Sion how many times he has thought about getting him back. But for now, Will needs to focus on beating Julius no matter what, so he doesn't have any time to fight Sion at all. However, it seems like Sion wouldn't allow Will to fight Julius if Will doesn't fight him first. For him, even though he has always found Will to be an eyesore who's literally unbearable, even though he can't help but be irritated by his refusal to give up, in spite of being incompetent, Sion can't help but get furious every time Will looks at something other than him. So he wants Will to at least look at him now. Sion then added that he doesn't give a damn about Will's circumstances, since if he continues to mess around, he's really going to beat the hell out of him right now. With that being said, hearing Sion saying these words simply means that Will has now been finally acknowledged by someone who has looked down on him before. So without any choice, Will now needs to face Sion with everything he has. At the back of Will's mind, any half-hearted attempts to get close will be thwarted by the Guardian. In that case, he will now gather his strength and then launch a counterattack right when the spell activates. Meanwhile, Sion went on to initiate his attack called the Dragos Knoll, which is a wide area annihilation spell in a charge by the Guardian. Although Sion's spell is a simultaneous attack, Will's counterattack trajectory is something that Sion has already seen before. It seems like Will has abandoned all defense against the annihilation spell to cut through the Guardian's core. However, before things get more intense, Colette stops the two from fighting by casting a wall spell. It turns out that Colette has already defeated Julius. After she beat him up to a pulp, he just disappeared. Since Julius is still out and about, Colette tells Will to go and find him as soon as possible, since he is the one who needs to settle things with Julius after all. When Sion tries to sway Colette away, the grumpy girl then goes on to scold Sion, saying that it is not every day that Will has such a great chance to impress the tower. So instead of stopping him, Sion needs to let him go for now. Before leaving, with a wide smile on his face, Will tells Sion to have a proper fight with him next time. Now, after overcoming many obstacles, it's almost time. The leading teams are about to enter the stadium, with the 9th team led by Julius first to emerge. However, before they can even be announced as winners, Will suddenly enters the stadium right after, with a fierce expression that simply says he wants to settle things once and for all. Meanwhile, at the top of the tower, a helper asks Alfaria if she can have a moment. However, instead of answering, Alfaria went on to act as if she were asleep, somehow irritating Sarissa, who thinks this shouldn't be the way a Magia Wenda should act. It seems like Sarissa has noticed that Alfaria is always sleeping or looking at the bottom of the tower. So instead of doing all those things, Sarissa asks her to take a moment and review some of the papers she has on hand. It seems like listed on the paper are the list of names of the prospective talents recommended by the Tower Scouts. It seems like the Scouts have gotten some of the excellent ones this year. Among them, the prospect that everyone is eyeing is none other than Julius Reinberg, who's right now making a splash in the Grand Festival of Magic. So Sarissa thinks that he may become Alfaria's successor in the future. But the question is that really the case? Meanwhile, back at the stadium, everyone is now in deep excitement as the final stretch of the crown attack has finally come. It is said that the one who obtains the crown waiting on the altar will earn the glory of victory. And right now, the 9th team and Will of the 6th team are facing off. Seeing Will at the entrance of the stadium somehow causes Julius's adrenaline to rush. Instead of worrying that he might get defeated in the end, Julius finds this quite nice, considering he was really looking forward to defeating Will in the most humiliating way possible. In the end, just based on the looks of it, Julius won't be satisfied with winning a landslide victory without having humiliated Will no matter what. Will, on the other hand, then stated that Julius didn't need to worry since he wouldn't allow himself to lose until Julius apologized for what he said to the dwarves the other day. Hearing this made Julius laugh, as he never expected that Will would be so fearless, since in his eyes, Will is nothing more than a little rat to exploit. To initiate the long-awaited fight, Julius went on to activate a smokescreen. Will then started contemplating what type of attack Julius and his team were planning. Do they intend to shoot him under the cover of the fog? Well, nobody knows for sure. As the rustling sound started to get evident, Will went on to stay alert as he could hear the movement that the team was doing. It seems like they plan to surround him with all three of them. So if he doesn't keep moving, there is a big chance that he will get hit one way or another. Even if his field of view is blocked, he can still locate the team from where they shoot. With much concentration, Will immediately dodged the shots from all three. He has also figured out their locations. However, when he was about to attack Julius, he wasn't able to sense the team's fourth shot. So as a result, he was caught in the trap of the group. It turns out that Julius and his team haven't even moved one step yet. At this moment, Will finally realizes that Julius is using some kind of illusion magic. However, Will thinks it doesn't add up at all. So it simply means that this is a spell called Glasto, an ice explosion spell that can simply pin anyone, to the point that they can't even move an inch. With that being said, within just a split second, Will has already been frozen by Julius's blast of ice. However, what really made everyone shocked was the fact that the spell Julius used was one of the secret arts invented by the rare genius Alfaria. El Grasfrost is a name given in tribute to the fruits of Alfaria's cereal art, the path of ingenuity she blazed in accomplishing the great feat of inventing 12 spells. What Julius is using is one of these 12 spells, the first art Ice Weiss, also known as the White Art. It is a clone spell that creates ice figures identical to the caster. Finding out about this fact shocked Will, as he never expected that someone would be able to use Alfaria's spell. So he went on to ask how did Julius learn about it. So Julius went on to immediately answer the question, saying that he was able to learn it through talent. Day and night, he went on to self-study, and even though it was but a fragment of their power, he somehow reached the Magia Wenda. Julius then went on to say that the Alvis Vina of the Ice Princess wand is no big deal either, and that one day he will surely strip Alfaria of everything. Hearing this made Will furious, so as a result, he immediately went on to rush and attack Julius right from the front. However, it seems like Will is up for some great battles since Julius has the ability to move his clones as he wishes, and can have them cast spells as well. But on top of everything, Julius's ability to create a cage makes everything worse for Will. It seems like Julius used his clones as launching points for a containment barrier, and now Will is all locked in. At the back of Julius's mind, nothing is easier to hunt than a beast that has left blood rushing to its head. As Julius starts to activate the cage, everyone's attention is now locked in to see who is really going to win this battle. Aside from that, it seems like Julius has also proved his worth to everyone, that he is indeed as strong as everyone expected him to be. With that being said, knowing his true capabilities, Julius then went on to announce to the scouts that he would become Alfaria's successor no matter what, and it seemed like everyone could also agree to that. Meanwhile, as others were amazed by Julius's sudden show-off, Iris started analyzing the whole situation. As she noticed, Julius had somehow used Will's monster-like agility to sell himself, which is such a good tactic if he wanted to get the sweet spot on the scouts list. But what Julius didn't think of is the fact that if he doesn't win, he will surely look really bad. With that being said, everyone suddenly became quiet as they were stunned by the fact that Will had somehow survived Julius's attack. With much fierceness in his eyes, Will thanked Julius as his spell helped him cool down his head, since it seems like it has been a bad habit of his that when someone talks bad of Alfaria, he always gets too heated up. Seeing Will all well and standing, Julius made a decision to disgrace him for this. However, before he can even do so, Will has already defeated two of Julius's group members, surprising everyone watching inside the stadium. At this point, no one knows what is already happening, as Julius's clones start to fall apart, one after another. Well, as it turns out, Julius has been controlling his clones with the aid of his teammates, so he can simply cast Alfaria's spell. But now that two of his teammates are already down, there's no way he can buy some time or power to defeat Will in the end. Meanwhile, back at the tower, Alfaria went on to tell Sarissa that what she wanted is not a successor, but instead what she wants by her side is a singular sword that shines brilliantly as it cuts through Julius's magic. Now that everyone has already seen Will defeating two members of the Night Team, and Julius's clones have crumbled to pieces, everyone has never been interested in knowing an ending to a fight other than this. Unlike Guardians, which function autonomously, the clones produced by Ice Weiss require full control by the caster. Since Julius's teammates were an auxiliary system aiding him in controlling his clones, it simply means that Julius hasn't mastered Ice Weiss at all. Hearing these words come out of Will's mouth somehow infuriates Julius so much. So without any hesitation, he went on to attack Will with all his might, hoping to finally make an end to this fight. As Julius tries to freeze Will to his feet, Will somehow manages to dodge his attacks one after another. Although Julius hates to admit it, but Will is definitely right, since the maximum number of clones he can control at the same time is around 4 in number. However, he is very confident that an incompetent like Will can't tell which one is the real him. So Julius thought that he could somehow find a way to win this fight after all. In the end, for him, the beauty of clones is that they are a mirror image of him, as they are impeccable and cannot be told apart. With that being said, there's no way that Will would be able to figure out which one is the real him. However, to his surprise, it seems like Will has somehow managed to find which one is the real deal. This made Julius somehow wonder how an incompetent like Will was able to know he was the real one. So Will went on to explain that the internal temperature of the Icewise clones is the exact opposite of the caster's average body temperature, about -36 to 37 degrees Celsius. Depending on the caster's usage of magic, it may even drop lower. If the control over the spell isn't perfect, they will leave ice fragments under their feet like the Frostwalkers do. So with that being said, that's how Will is able to find which one is the real Julius among the 5. Hearing Will state this factual analysis made Julius furious, as he couldn't believe that an incompetent like Will knew about the spell more than he did. So Will went on to say that it is because he and Alfaria grew up together. As it turns out, they were both abandoned children who grew up in the same orphanage. That's why he knows Alfaria's spells so well. Since the beginning, he already looked up to her so much. However, along the way, he told himself that he could never be able to reach her level. But it all changed, since from now on, he will make sure to make Alfaria proud no matter what. However, it seems like Julius couldn't accept that fact at all. So Will has no choice but to show him what he really has. Although Will can't deny the fact that Julius is certainly amazing, since there hasn't been a mage who could use Elfie's spell before him. However, Icewise is a spell Elfie invented when she was 2 years old. Hearing this fact made everyone shocked. With that being said, Will knows that Elfie's spell is not perfect as it also has its flaws. So seeing Julius flaunting it now just makes him look like an emperor with no clothes. Of course, hearing such an insult from someone he was looking down on before made Julius furious. So without any hesitation, the number of his clones suddenly increased further. From 4, there are already 8 in total. However, this thing is not hard for Will to defeat, since when they were kids, he was always bullied by 10 Elfies. And just like that, Will went on to defeat one Julius after another. After a good minute, the MC then went on to announce that the once incompetent student had just defeated an elite with over 10,000 credits. Even though it is definitely hard to believe, no one can deny the fact that there is no one who can stop him now, and all that is left for him to seize with his own hands is the crown. However, it seems like while Will is still in a duel with Julius, the other groups have already arrived and have obtained the trophy, making the 12th team led by Ignore the winner of the whole competition. Meanwhile, back at the tower, Alfaria asks Sarissa if there is a spell that allows the caster to redo the past. Since such a spell doesn't exist, Alfaria went on to ask again if there might be a spell that erases memories. Although there is, Sarissa is afraid that Alfaria is not allowed to use such a thing. As it turns out, Alfaria wanted to erase some of Will's memory, since she felt embarrassed when Will told everyone she was bullying him, when in fact what she really wanted was to spend most of her time with him. Then back to the stadium, Colette rushes towards Will, who is now exhausted from all the fighting. But what's important is the fact that although he lost the competition, he somehow still won the duel. So there's no doubt that his kindness has somehow brought about smiles to everyone. On the other hand, while everyone is celebrating, Julius is still furious at the fact that he got defeated by the loser they have been calling all the time. After the competition, the dwarves together with Will started celebrating the victory with a toast. Everyone is happy and thankful for Will for his hard work and sacrifices for them all. However, what's more intriguing for them to know is whether Will actually gets headhunted by the tower. Instead of waiting for Will to answer, Colette, who is now extremely drunk, went on to answer the dwarves' question, saying that Will didn't make the cut since not only did they have teammates falling out, but they also didn't even win the competition itself. Colette then started blaming Sion for all of that. So the dwarves ask where Sion is now, and why didn't he come to the wrap-up party. Will then stated that he did invite Sion, however, he himself didn't want to come. With that being said, although Will didn't win the competition, the dwarves are proud of him as he still won the fight against Julius, and the dwarves got a proper apology. Seeing everyone get excited and have some fun made Wagner-sensei a bit worried, so Colette asks if Wagner suddenly realizes that arranging a wrap-up party is a bad idea after all. Professor Wagner then stated that she didn't even stop the students from holding it to begin with, so she's not going to stop anyone now. Rather than that, Will entered the Grand Festival of Magic and went on quite the rampage, so Wagner wonders how the team is planning to deal with everyone starting tomorrow onwards. This question made Colette confused, as she thought that seeing how skillful Will is, everyone would start seeing him in a new light. However, Wagner wishes it was that simple. The next day, out of nowhere, Julius and Sion invited Will and Collett to come with them to the dungeon. This made the two surprised as they never expected this sudden invitation at all. So Sion went on to explain that they just want Will to at least acknowledge his strength. However, before Will can even answer their request, other groups start to arrive, also asking Will to come with them. Some even stated that they would not allow the two to steal a march on them. As the crowd started to gather, Will couldn't even process the whole situation just yet. Noticing everyone gunning for Will, after he showed them what he is capable of at the Grand Festival of Magic, made Collett realize that this is what the Professor Wagner was actually talking about. So, to put a hold on this loud commotion, Collett jumps into the situation, saying that they have no right to ask Will so suddenly, considering they have all made fun of him before. So Collett went on to scare everyone, saying that Will could get furious any minute now if they didn't stop bothering him. However, it seems like it's actually the total opposite, as Will actually loves being invited, since this means he will start making friends already. So, some students started telling Collett not to get in the way, since it seems like she is trying to keep him all to herself. With that being said, the students keep on asking Will to come with them to the dungeon, and as an exchange, they will concede to each other the credits they got from killing the monsters. However, it seems like Collett is persistent in not letting Will join anyone, to the point that she goes on to tell everyone that Will and she plan to go shopping together. As the night falls and the sky turns dark, Collett starts getting flustered while rolling in her bed, remembering what she told everyone earlier. It seems like she somehow feels embarrassed at what she had done in the heat of the moment, since shopping together can leave an impression that they are going on a date. With that being said, it seems like the word flew so fast, as one of Collett's roommates suddenly came up to her, asking if she was really going on a date with Will. Collett tries to tell her roommate Rose that it is not a date. However, it seems like Rose thinks it doesn't matter either way. But since they're going shopping together, Collett at least needs to glam up a little. Finally realizing that it might be a little rude to go out looking so dull, Collett decided to ask Rose to let her borrow a cute dress she could wear. The next day, Collett and Will then went on to do as they had planned yesterday. Or should I say, Collett had planned. While waiting for Will, the thought that this might be really a date keeps coming back to Collett's mind. Her deep thinking suddenly got interrupted when Will greeted her a good morning. Since Collett does look good in her dress, Will goes on to compliment her, causing her face to turn red. Although Collett looks different from usual, Will's heart can't help but skip a beat. Then out of nowhere, Will's roommate Rosti enters the scene, shocking Collett by his sudden appearance. It seems like this is the first time that Rosti and Collett have been properly introduced to one another. Well, as it turns out, Rosti wanted to come with them to go shopping, which is something Collett wasn't expecting at all. On top of that, seeing both boys holding hands together surprised Collett so much. Throughout the whole day, Rosti doesn't leave Will's side, so this causes Collett to feel a bit off. In the end, when Collett couldn't take it anymore, she went on to tell Will about how she felt about the whole situation. So Will went on to explain that even though Rosti was showing more physical intimacy than usual, Will can assure her that Rosti has been like that since the first day they met. However, Collett is sure that there is something more to it than meets the eye. So when Will goes on to do some of his errands, Collett asks Rosti what it is that he and Will really have. So Rosti went on to state that he likes Will more than Collett does, and he will do everything to make him his no matter what. While the two are left to discuss among themselves, Will comes across Liana Owensaw, a known Miss Perfect because she has acquired all the written, practical, and hands-on credits. She is a person who stands high above the masses, the exact opposite of an incompetent like Will. Out of nowhere, Liana asks Will to come with her, and to Will's surprise, it seems like the Elite Four of the school, Liana, Sion, Julius, and Ignore, are now inviting him to join their party for a combined hands-on exercise dungeon attack. With that being said, combined hands-on exercise is the culmination of hands-on, in which the final floors within the academy's limits are opened up, and the number of credits that can be earned skyrocketed. But it is accompanied by a greater danger. With not much time left until the exam, it is no exaggeration to say that the outcome of this exercise determines whether or not the students will be able to go up the tower. After finding out that Liana asks Will to join the party, immediately Sion refuses to agree. Since Will keeps on ignoring him, Sion even goes on to cast some of his magic spells to somehow control the whole situation. However, it seems like the others don't want him to do as he wishes, so they go on to tell Sion to at least hear what Liana actually plans to do. So Liana went on to state that since the combined hands-on exercise is about to begin, she would like to put up a party composed of the finest mages in their grade. And since Will has distinguished himself during the Grand Festival of Magic, Liana knows that Will possesses something that the rest of them don't, and she has judged it to be of use in the dungeon. However, it seems like both Sion and Julius question Liana's judgment, since for them, those who can't even use search in the dungeon will just be a liability. That's why no matter how much Liana tries to convince them, Sion still refuses to be in the same party as Will no matter what. So to tease the two, Ignore went on to say that they may have been acting this way since they have somehow lost to Will during the competition. And since Will's sword has defeated their wands, the two can't accept that fact even to this day. So the two tried to weigh down Ignore's confidence by saying that he is also no better than Liana herself. To their surprise, it seems like the elf mage is very aware of that fact. That's why he respects Liana so much. As a result, if Liana's judgment of Will is good, then Ignore will fully respect her decision to handpick the incompetent. To further explain, Liana went on to state that her aim is to use Ignore and the others to go up the tower as the top students in their grade. She went on to bluntly state that all she wants is more recognition, worth, and a promising future. So this made Will curious as to whether the strongest student of their class, Liana, didn't get headhunted by the scout. Liana then went on to say that the Lightning faction did reach out to her, so Will wonders why she wants to go all this trouble even though she already secured a post-graduation placement. Liana then explained that it is because the students in the academy now are in fact unsold goods and inferior types. Since the family that Liana is from is generally a short-lived family, she must deliver overwhelming results to prevent the downfall of her family no matter what. So simply going up the tower won't do. If it comes to that, then Liana has no choice but to reach the Magia Wenda no matter what. Hearing this revelation caused Will to gasp in shock. At this point, Will is amazed at the fact that everyone in the academy has ambitions and aspirations of their own, just like him. Since all of them have a goal to achieve, they all have decided to go with Liana's plan, since in the end they will all benefit from it one way or another. After deciding, Will immediately heads back to where he left Collet and Rosti earlier. There he informs the two that he will be participating with Liana and the others in the upcoming combined hands-on exercise. The next day, Professor Wagner went on to inform everyone regarding the upcoming combined hands-on exercise that is only days away. According to her, the entry restriction on the 7th to 10th floor of the dungeon will be lifted, making it possible for anyone to defeat monsters of high credit value, notably the 5-over enemies. It's only in this combined hands-on exercise that students can earn more than 1,000 credits in one go. In particular, a large number of credits can be earned by defeating the floor keeper. Although it may seem like such a great deal for students, everyone should also keep in mind that there have also been deaths on the exercise in the past years. Last year in particular, 4 students were eaten alive by monsters. During the course of the exercise, the professors are stationed inside the dungeon, but there is no end to the number of those who die tragic deaths no matter how much they try to prevent it from happening. So for students to survive the exercise, they have no choice but to keep their minds in order through the whole process. With that being said, the Flame Faction's second-in-command officer Logwell then went on to inform one of the 5 wands, Karyat, that the decision to hold the exercise again this year has been finalized. Karyat then asks Logwell if their king has already returned from his expedition, but since he hasn't yet, Karyat can't help but be a little worried, since the barrier is already on the verge of disappearing. A few days after the combined hands-on exercise finally starts, Liana is shocked to see Collet joining them, considering she didn't even invite her to come. However, it seems like Collet has already decided to come, since for her, if Will is going, she will too. With that said, the duration of the exercise is 1 week. Unlike regular hands-on, the students will have to survive being cooped up inside the dungeon for the entire time. Base camps have also been set up on each floor, so everyone should check their map to navigate the whole area. Moreover, the faculty members will be on standby to ensure the safe evacuation of students who wish to discontinue or retire from the exercise. With that being said, the exercise is now finally commenced, with Will dedicated to getting some good results so that he can finally go where Alfaria is. As they jumped into the deeper floors, a loud burst was heard out of nowhere. As they scanned the area, they were shocked to see a swarm of crimson ants rushing towards them. Since Will is aware of the fact that mages are at their weakest when enemies get in close, he plans to shield everyone as he is the vanguard after all. However, before he can even go in front, Ignore stops him, saying that there's no need for that at all. It seems like the Owensaw family, where Liana is from, is a family of knights, so killing this many creatures is just a piece of cake to her. On top of her sword skill, she also possesses enchant magic, which makes her a rare kind of mage who can specialize in close combat magic. After dealing with every ant there is, Liana tells everyone that they should start moving already so that they can get ahead of the other parties. Meanwhile, somewhere in the dungeon, 2 unknown individuals are seen slaughtering one of the students. It seems like they have plans during the festival, so they have no choice but to slaughter everyone that comes their way. A flashback then flashes with Wagner asking Will if he knows what kind of magic is the most important inside the dungeon. It's actually neither offensive or defensive magic. The answer is actually Search, a common magic that detects enemies and anomalies. For mages who are navigating their way through the dungeon, it is the most basic yet most important magic required. So, Will remembering this made him wonder if his party mates can actually do the job properly. Then out of nowhere, Julius started aiming attacks at Will's direction. Julius tells him to stay out of the way, as this is such a chaotic fight against a swarm of enemies. With that being said, Will tries to locate the enemies in time. However, it seems like the range of Julius and the rest Search is wider than his detection range. As a result, everyone is taking out the enemies before Will can even intercept them. While he is contemplating, some of the enemies try to attack him from behind. But thankfully, thanks to Ignore, Will is saved from total defeat. However, what really amazes Will is the fact that Ignore is able to wipe every enemy out with just one blow. At this point, Ignore went on to say that he has finally realized that Will is indeed actually a bigger liability than he had expected. This somehow makes him even question Liana's judgment. Before Ignore can add to that statement, Liana stated that to be accurate, Will simply hasn't had the time to act as a shield. That's why she is sure that he'll show his true strength as soon as they are already against the 5 over. So it is okay for him to be a liability for him, since she is sure of the fact that he is definitely stronger than everyone thinks. Julius then went on to agree to what Ignore stated, saying that he already has warned them that those who can't even use Search like Will would be a liability. Mages can use their wands to absorb the magical elements emitted by the monsters that they have defeated. In this way, the wands function as recording devices, and the Academy uses that as a way to track and verify the monsters the students have slain. With that said, Colette then remembers that they need to collect monster parts so that the Academy can credit Will appropriately, as it turns out that Will can't collect magical elements since he doesn't have magical powers. As a result of that, those who form parties with an incompetent who must collect the remains every single time quickly come to hate it. So Sion went on to tell Will that since he is part of their party, he should stop being an embarrassment already. Hearing this somehow made Will a bit embarrassed of himself. However, he already knew this was going to happen, so he has no choice but to do his best to be of help to everyone else in other ways. That's what he wanted to do, but it seems like there is nothing he can do anymore. Although he already expected this, everyone is so outstanding that there isn't time for him to show his stuff. At this rate, he's really going to be no more than a baggage carrier. With that said, after a whole stressful day of fighting monsters one after another, Liana tells the group that it's now time for them to take a break. Since they're literally in the middle of a dangerous dungeon, Ignore decided to build them a fortress of flames. Will is amazed at seeing it in real life. Since the flames are only an illusion, it is safe for everyone to stay inside. However, the monsters on the other hand would be wary of the area of flames that suddenly sprang up, so they wouldn't come near for a while. As they settle inside the flame, Liana asks Will to distribute to everyone the dungeon rations she gave him earlier. As he is about to hand over the rations to Ignore, Ignore stops him, telling him not to come any closer and just leave it on the ground. This confused Will so much, so Ignore went on to explain that elves only allow the touch of those they acknowledge, and he doesn't want to touch Will by accident at all. Colette then stated that there is no need to be so strict since they are all part of the same party. However, since Ignore is an elf, there's no way he will change his ways for the sake of some couple of mages he was teamed up with. He even added that the only person in the party he acknowledges is Liana. Respecting how elves do their way, Will stops Colette from discussing any further. After all, the elves' culture and customs are different from theirs, so Will doesn't mind it at all. Though they immigrated from another world just like the dwarves, they are magic users who are objects of reverence. That's why they tend to stick to their own race and are snobbish, but they possess more talent than most mages there are, and the one who reigns as one of the Magia Wenda is none other than the elves' queen herself. With that discussion already settled, Liana went on to share with everyone their upcoming plans. According to her, their top priority target is Nabaris, the Scorching Blaze. Liana wants the party to defeat the floorkeeper of the 10th floor, of which only one will appear in this exercise. It is said that the credit value of it is around 110, which makes it the biggest single amount of credits they can earn in hands-on. However, they also need to be aware of the fact that casualties are a common occurrence when students challenge the Nabaris, so it is without a doubt the boss of the combined hands-on exercise. With that said, Liana wants to use this opportunity to show off the tower what she has in her after she defeats Nabaris. She then added that she would like for the party to challenge Nabaris at their best, with as much magic power in reserve as possible. After that, they can deal with the rest of the monsters in the end. With that said, since this is something beneficial to everyone, they all immediately agreed to go to the 10th floor to put an end to this exercise once and for all. Meanwhile, somewhere in the dungeon, a headless individual is seen. It seems like it is the same guy that killed a student earlier. To make it worse, it seems like they have already killed a bunch. With that said, as Will's party reaches the 10th floor, they are shocked to see that since a while ago, there have been monster corpses strewn all over the place. So they wonder if this is the work of another party. However, Ignore knows that is not possible at all. Scion also noticed that they had made it to the 10th floor via the shortest route possible, with them not even swinging by any of the base camps. So there is no way that any students could have gotten ahead of them. As Will checks on them more closely, he is shocked to see that they were torn apart by brute force. On top of that, the dungeon is unbelievably quiet for some reason. So as they check the Noberus room, the whole party is shocked to see that the floor keeper has already been slaughtered. They start to wonder who could possibly have done this. Since the magical elements haven't disappeared yet, means that it hasn't been long since it was killed. So Will starts to have some flashbacks again, as he clearly remembers. Wagner-sensei did tell him that Search is indeed versatile, but it isn't omnipotent. It can have a hard time detecting crafty traps, and mages would likely use Hide to counter it. And on top of everything, there are also some monsters who can escape detection from Search. And just like that, a group of monsters started rushing towards them, causing the team to fall to a floor that was beyond the academy's limits. As they fall to this unknown floor, Ignore starts having flashbacks of his past, when the elf's queen goes on to abandon him. As they land a hard hit, they are immediately welcomed by gigantic serpents. Immediately, Will went to a position to defend everyone from this deadly monster. As it turns out, the party has now reached beyond their limit. It seems like they have landed on the 11th floor, which simply means that they are in great trouble. It is known to everyone that from the 11th floor on, it is the domain of the tower. It is a danger zone that only high mages are allowed to step foot in. This is an extensive floor that extends all the way down to the 15th floor. Both the complexity of the layout and the strength of the monsters are a world apart from anything on the previous floor. So being isolated on this floor is gravely fatal. If they don't quickly reunite with the others, the dungeon will eat them alive. It turns out that the group got separated when they fell, so it is their mission to get in touch with one another again if they want to survive this whole thing. After defending the group, Will immediately checks on the others. However, as he is about to help Ignore with his wounds, Ignore tells him to stay away no matter what. It seems like even if it's a matter of life or death, Ignore still sticks with his beliefs no matter what. To the extent that he even went on to administer first aid to himself. As Will scans the area, aside from the fact that Ignore has been injured, nearly all of their baggage has also been wrecked, including Rosty's magic items. Although they still have food and water, it would only last them for a good 2 days. However, considering the floor extreme's condition, it might even only last 1 day. With that being said, Will tells Ignore that they should start moving since if they don't, they might actually die in the end. Moreover, Will also thinks that as long as that monster's on the 10th floor, he suspects that any kind of rescue will be too late. Meanwhile, it seems like Will's suspicions were right since the base camp has also been obliterated by the surging hordes of monsters. It seems like the other professors assigned, aside from Eliza and Wagner, have also been killed in the process, as their heads were twisted by someone so brutally. Moreover, all of the mazers except for Eliza's have also been destroyed. She also hasn't received any word from the 9th floor and below, but there is a good chance that these floors have become just as chaotic as the 8th floor. Hearing all this made Wagner wonder what was happening, since there was no way this was all just a coincidence. Since the situation has gotten worse than expected, other professors like Edward have also come to the aid, announcing that the exercise has been called off. The students are endangered due to this irregularity, and since they are short on manpower, Edward and Wagner have no choice but to come and rescue everyone. While this is all happening, Rosty looks extremely calm as he enters the tent, marking a big question mark. Meanwhile, back in the dungeon, Ignore and Will already start making their way. Along the way, Will tells Ignore that he should refrain from using Search too often, since even if it is just common magic, overusing it will drain him one way or another. For now, he should conserve his magic no matter what. However, it seems like Ignore is already stressing out since this is literally the 11th floor, a danger zone no one can anticipate at all. So, Will assures Ignore that they can leave the navigation of his fellow Kiki. However, that doesn't mean that they don't need to stay alert. For now, Will tells Ignore to stand for lookout, since what they need to do now is not to fear being taken by surprise, but to reduce the number of times they have to engage in combat as much as possible. Ignore is somehow amazed at how Will is so calm throughout the whole situation. So Will goes on to explain that it is because he needs to earn credits to reach his goals no matter what. In the midst of their conversation, a horde of monsters then starts attacking them. With much precision, both Will and Ignore manage to defeat them all in one go. However, it seems like Ignor's illusion magic doesn't work on one of the monsters. So as a result, he ended up almost getting killed if it was not for Will. With much precision, Will struck the monster's head using his sword. This whole situation has somehow made Ignor laugh as he starts looking down on himself. So Will went on to state that he is talented like the others. However, for Ignor, he is a true failure, more than Will has ever been. Hearing Ignor say those words somehow shocked Will so much. However, since Will still doesn't know what Ignor is really referring to, the mage elf then goes on to explain he is the only one in the academy who is already in his 6th year, as the other elves have all gone up to the tower already without exception. As a result, he is now referred to as someone talentless and a disgrace to his kin. As proof, Ignor himself can't even use phantasmagoric magic, which is a kind of magic that materializes illusions like what Will has seen during the magic festival. Instead, his magic can only produce illusions without any substance, and to top it all off, it is merely for show and can't actually be used to defeat enemies. However, despite hearing all that, Will still sees Ignor as amazing, since he is strong enough to even get into the top 3 at the academy. However, for Ignor, just like what Liana stated, he, like the rest still in the academy right now, is nothing but unsold goods and inferior types. So no matter how much Will tries to make Ignor feel better, it seems like the pain and inferiority he is feeling is just so evident that even the nicest words can't even make him feel better. Meanwhile, somewhere around the 11th floor, Colette and Liana are also discussing Liana's statement earlier regarding them being referred to as the inferior types. Since Colette also didn't get the whole thought clearly, Liana went on to explain that being headhunted at the Grand Festival of Magic or inventing new spells is something that everyone in the academy is wishing for, since those who have displayed talent have already gone up the tower with no regard to the graduation process of the academy. That is why for the past 6 years, Liana has been unable to do anything but gaze upon the backs of such people, making her realize that those who are left in the academy are indeed unsold goods. Hearing this caused Colette to get speechless for a while. However, after a good minute or two, she went on to say that in some cases, it might be true. But then again, everyone calls Liana Miss Perfect, so she shouldn't worry much about it in the end. However, for Liana, that is just within the academy, as they are no more than frogs who know nothing of the vastness of the sea. This frightful feeling somehow excites Liana to do her best. After all, she was made to see it. Since Alfaria, a once first-year student at the academy, was able to do it, there's no way they can't as well. At the moment that Alfaria ascended all the way to the top and became one of the Magia Wenda, was the same time Liana realized that those who are inferior will never measure up in the face of true talent. Moreover, back to Ignor and Will. Ignor went on to explain that the first time he realized that he was a failure was when his own foster sister back in her homeland made him feel so. The most surprising part of all that is his foster sister was none other than the exalted queen, who's the pride of their kin, Elnor Leos Alv. As a result of growing up together, Elnor and Ignor developed a close bond, to the point that he promised to make sure to support her no matter what. However, by the end, Elnor turns out to be a high elf, so great that she even conjured up the king's forest. Due to her immensely powerful magic at such a young age, she already became one of the Magia Wenda. With that being said, in order to reunite with her, Ignor continued to work hard on his own, but no matter how much he tries, he remains a failure in the eyes of everyone. He who desperately looked down on mages in an attempt to delude himself is simply an unsightly elf himself. Ignor is already expecting Will to judge and look down on him, considering all the unexpected information he shared. However, to his surprise, Will even finds it fascinating since it now explains why he has always felt that they were similar in some way. So, Will went on to state that he knows Ignor is such an amazing elf, but since he is not at his best physique at the moment, Will promises that until he gets back on his feet, he will protect him no matter what. Meanwhile, back to Colette and Liana, Colette bluntly expressed, after hearing all of Liana's statements, that at this moment, she can clearly tell that Liana has an inferiority complex towards the tower. However, for her, there's one friend who will surely laugh at Liana if he hears that this is what they torture themselves over. And we all know it's none other than Will, the talented and competent. Then, let's go back to Will and Ignor, who have now been running into 5 over enemies. Fighting these gigantic and skillful monsters made them realize that this place is indeed on a completely different level from the previous floors after all. And yet, Will keeps on fighting them all tirelessly, causing Ignor to get speechless in amazement. However, what really confuses Ignor is the wondering as to why Will even makes an effort to protect him. So, to end this series of unanswered questions, Ignor went on to ask Will why doesn't he forsake him like the elves, which Will answered by stating that it is because he knows Ignor is definitely not a snarky elf or anything of that sort. In the midst of the conversation, a loud strange sound echoes through the room. Ignore tried to use his search ability, but it seemed like it didn't pick up anything at all. After a brief moment, Will finally realized that this sound simply means the dungeon is spawning monsters. For their first enemy, a Balkers comes in, dashing towards them. Balkers are known to be one of the notorious monsters of the floor, so their credit value is around 11. Based on what Will knows, their bodies are immune to physical attack, and to make it worse, they are also resistant to magic. However, there is only one thing that is effective against them, and that is the elves' phantasmagoric magic. Since Will can't do this on his own, he asks Ignore for help. However, it seems like Ignore doesn't have the confidence to try, as he is already afraid to fail. That's why Will went on to state that it is okay for him to fail. After all, people like them who aren't geniuses can't progress without failing. Despite that, Ignore is still worried that if he messes up, Will might die in the process. So Will went on to assure him that he wouldn't die since they still had a dream to reach. As a result, Ignore builds up his courage and goes on to do as Will asks him to. Along the way, Will has kept him motivated, saying that his hard work up to this day will definitely not be for nothing, as Will truly believes that Ignore will be able to make it in the end. As a result, Ignore's era of being in fear of his traumas ends now, as the trust that Will has given in him is the one thing he refuses to betray. And just like that, he is able to do as he intended, defeating the monster in one go. After the brief fight, Ignore immediately kneels down, apologizing to Will for all the rudeness he has shown him in the past. From now on, Ignore will already look at Will as a warrior worthy of respect. Although Will has no plans on saying it, he went on to state that he himself has also always respected Ignore so much. So there's a big chance that a new friendship might blossom in the coming days. Meanwhile, somewhere on the 11th floor, Sion and Julius are seen also trying to find their way out. However, along the way, since they both are hard-headed and short-tempered, they always find themselves arguing one minute after another. After arguing over some water, Julius can't help but get irritated at Sion for being so arrogant just because he has been getting better at magic lately. On top of that, Julius knows that they are both incompatible, which makes it even funnier when he thinks about how they were both humiliated by Will during the festival. In the midst of his wondering, Sion suddenly grabs him, while informing him that they got some company. At first, Julius didn't want to believe it since he just used search, and he found no sign of any monsters or anything. However, Sion thinks that it is just an illusion since they have also experienced the same thing back on the 10th floor. After all, it is already common knowledge that demons can evade being detected by search, so staying alert is a must if they don't want to get in much trouble. And just a few seconds later, evil sentinels started to appear, all rushing towards them. Even if it is the intestines of nightmares they are talking about here, for so many evil sentinels to appear in one go, Julius wonders if this has something to do with the monster they saw on the 10th floor. Since these sentinels have caused Sion his greatest and deepest humiliation, he would make sure to burn each and every one of them to ashes. On the other hand, back on the 8th floor of the dungeon, everyone is now in chaos as the monsters rush to attack one student after another. Fortunately, before things get out of hand, Edward Sensei and Wagner have arrived right on time to make sure that the students are safe. As soon as they have found the time, Edward immediately announces that students are to evacuate to the 6th floor right in this instance. Both the professors are happy at the fact that most of the students hadn't gone past the 8th floor yet, making it such a lucky break for them. All except for one party, Liana's party, according to prior reports, should be making their way to the floorkeeper with the aim of defeating it. Now the problem is, the 10th floor is so huge, given the very limited number of mazers they have left. It is going to be extremely difficult for the two professors to find them on time. However, it seems like Wagner knows exactly where the students are since the familiar that he gave Will is a carbuncle. So Kiki's crystal is connected to one of their crystals on hand. And according to the crystal, it seems like Liana's team is now on the 11th floor. Going back to the students, Colette asks Liana how long they have been down there, since it's already been a good few hours since they landed. Liana then stated that they were about 16 hours into the day, so it was natural that they had already run out of food and water, making it even more difficult for them to find their way out. Although they have already tried every trick in the book, it seems like nothing is working at all, as the monsters aren't letting them get any decent amount of rest. However, Colette is so thankful that she is with Liana, since for her, if it was not for Liana, she would have been dead already. But it seems like Liana blames herself for what happened to them, so Colette immediately assures her that it is not the case at all, since it was all the monsters that appeared on the 10th floor fault. To keep Liana from overthinking and blaming things on herself, Colette keeps on blabbering the reasons why she shouldn't do so. In the end, Liana is super thankful for how Colette has reacted to the whole situation. To further make Liana feel at ease, Colette stated that she shouldn't worry anymore since she was sure that Will would definitely come and save them in no time. Speaking of which, it seems like the four boys have already come across each other at last, with Ignore stunned at how amazing Scion actually is in using his magical powers, which Julius immediately set straight. Since they both were the ones who actually defeated the Horde of Sentinels, the boys have now finally realized that both girls are isolated on their own. So with much effort, they immediately move to find the ladies on time. Meanwhile, back to Colette and Liana, it seems like they run into one of their teachers named Bruno. However, his looks are rather eerie for some reason. Within just seconds, his head then falls to the ground, revealing the true identity of the individual. It seems like it was the same strange headless person that caused havoc during the festival. Since the Duke had failed to finish off the group, Headless decided to take things into his own hands. Realizing that they are in a gravely troublesome situation, the two girls then ask who the hell are these people, and why did they kill the Academy's professors? Hair-raising, the peculiar individuals went on to say that they were just some bad guys that wanted to smash the false sky. Hearing this made Liana realize that they must be talking about Magia Wenda's Great Barrier, since according to legend, when the barrier is broken, the calamity will begin. So for them to be able to do that, they first need to kill everyone in the dungeon. With that being said, as they are about to slice Colette and Liana in half, Will and the others immediately repel the attack just in time. Fortunately, thanks to Kiki's nose, they were able to locate the girls before things went bad. As the Headless tries to attack once more, the other guy tells him to stop since the troublesome bunch is now headed their way. So they have no time to spare killing some students, as they need to retrieve that thing they are looking for. And just like that, both of them vanished in thin air using the Magic Queen's teleportation secret art, Gate. Seeing such magic in real life amazes the mages, as this was definitely impossible for just anyone to know. With that being said, the group only has one conclusion, and that is that the guys they were about to fight earlier are great mages with high power, considering they were able to summon the evil Grand Duke effortlessly. The 1/1000th rule is the conversion formula that the tower employs using credits as the standard. A monster with a credit value set at 1 is considered the equivalent of a mage with 1000 credits. So, having a credit value of 270 equates to a mage with the strength of the evil Grand Duke. Since the Headless and his companion left, a number of monsters started attacking the group one after another. Since there is still time before the passageway is locked, Will tries to help his party mates as long as he can still do so. Will, together with the others, started using all their skills and strengths to kill all the monsters that came their way. However, even with Ignore's phantasmagoric magic, the monster is still able to tear it through using brute force. But thankfully, the group is able to make it on time. As they got to the other side, Colette asked what the heck is that monster, as it was the first time she had ever seen one like that before. Julius then went on to explain that according to what she had read in the Academy's archives, Evil Grand Duke is a high-ranked species of the evil race that appears on the 25th floor. So they start to wonder, why the hell did it land on the 11th? Liana has one explanation, and that is probably the work of those mages who had used Gate earlier. Even though they were able to run away from the evil Grand Duke, it seems like they are still not safe, since there are so many evil guards and evil sentinels still looking for them. Liana then noted that the Grand Duke must have ordered for the monsters to search for their prey. So that simply explains why there is a mass outbreak of sentinels on this floor, which also means that there's no guaranteed escape for the group, and their deaths might not be that far anymore. As the group's minds started to cloud, considering they now didn't know what they needed to do, Will went on to say they had no choice but to fight and defeat the Grand Duke with all their might. According to him, when there is a Lord of Baron rank or above, the evil-type monsters will establish a territory that spans several floors. But if the Lord is defeated, they will lose their chain of command, which should create an opening for the group. Now that the monster's leader has been summoned to the floor using Gate, making its soldier fall into disarray would make it easier for the Academy's rescuers to come. However, Julius thinks this is such a bad idea, as their life is on the line. So Will went on to state that he indeed has a plan, but he can't force it on them all since he can't use magic himself. So this made Julius think that he could finally take the others onto not believing in Will. However, it seems like Ignore trusts Will's instincts and plan. Hearing Ignore, who used to hate Will just a while ago, somehow shocked the group. So to make sure that he does not confuse anyone, Ignore went on to explain that he has been saved countless times by Will's wisdom and selflessness. That is why he strongly believes in those qualities this time too. Colette also stated that she also believes in Will, as she knows very well that Will knows the dungeon better than anyone else. Even Scion thinks that Will's plan is the only thing they have right now, since if they try to flee, the monsters will just find them and corner them anyway. So what they can do now is face it head on. To assure Liana that they are making the right decision, Ignore also stated that he already has allowed Will to touch him, so he is asking Liana to have faith in Will, who is now acknowledged by an elf as a sworn friend. With that being said, Liana ended up agreeing with everyone as well. She even thought that she made the wrong decision putting Will as their shield, since he is more likely a good leader than she is. In this dire situation, it is only his eyes that have not been crushed by despair. So if Ignore, whom Liana trusts and believes in, entrusts it all to Will, she has no problem in trusting him as well. With that being said, Will now has the floor to give the team orders in hopes of them to get back home safely. Hearing all these wonderful comments from his party made Will's heart flutter, as he had never expected anyone other than Collet to believe in his judgment wholeheartedly. That is why he made a decision to ensure that they all make it out alive no matter what. On the other hand, it seems like Julius can't believe that the rest of the party has now been in favor of Will. So Will went on to negotiate with him, saying that if he lent his hand to help them, he would also teach him the secret trick of Alfaria's spell in exchange. For sure, Julius would immediately grab onto that opportunity as he wanted to become the strongest after all. Cage of frozen earth, sky-splitting hail, eternity is fleeting, a moment passes forever. The lyre of tears, a tune of azure ice, all things fall motionless, is the chant that Julius usually states when fighting. Since the whole party is now in great trouble, for them all to be able to overcome despair, Julius has no choice but to stick with Will's plan. Hearing Will openly offer that he will reveal the secret trick of the Alvisvina, aka the Ice Princess wand, somehow surprised Julius so much. Since it is just too good to be true, Julius asks Will if he heard the statement just right. Without hesitation, Will went on to state for the second time that he would indeed reveal the secret of Elfie's spell, Ice Weiss, if Julius agreed to join him in the fight against the Grand Duke. Since many know that Elfie's spell allows the caster to carry on incantations, normally if the chanting of the incantation is interrupted, the spell will not be invoked. However, with Elfie's Ice Weiss, it is possible to pick up where the chant left off and continue with the incantation. If a clone gets destroyed and the incantation is interrupted, another clone can just resume chanting the rest of it. By doing that, one can cast even upper tier spells with very lengthy incantations. Hearing such a magnificent thing shocked Julius, as he had never expected such power to even exist in the first place. After all, with him learning and studying the spell since the beginning, Julius is well aware of the fact that not everyone can control Ice Weiss, as it is difficult in many ways possible. That is why Julius would do everything, even if it meant for him to obey Will's order, for the sake of mastering Elfie's spell no matter what. With that said, although he doesn't want to do it, he has no choice but to go with the party's plan, considering he is the defender, and the enemy has also finally arrived. While Julius does his tasks as the defender, Will goes on to order everyone to cover for Julius, since lower tier spells are good enough to pin down the enemy. Ignore, Scion, and Collet then went on to do as Will asked of them. Using their respective magical abilities, the three went on to attack the enemy from every direction. However, much to their surprise, the monster is completely unscathed at all. As it turns out, the enemy possesses what's called ironclad wings, which is a protective item that is hard to destroy, giving anyone who possesses it the edge of winning a fight. Despite Will knowing the fact that Scion's attacks and his won't get through, giving up easily is somehow not part of Will's vocabulary. With that being said, Will has formulated a plan in mind, with them becoming decoys until Julius begins his bombardment. So for now, they must keep the monster's attention away from Julius as much as possible. After waiting for a couple of minutes, Julius finally is able to do as planned. The amazement in Collet's eyes is undeniable, since there is no doubt that Julius's trump card is indeed majestic and powerful in many ways possible. However, despite that, it seems like the monster still managed to block it, which is something they have already expected, considering the monster's credit value is around 270. So, blocking such powerful attacks is just a piece of cake. Will, knowing that the monster might very well defend itself against Julius's sure kill attack, Liana then enters the fight, with the hope that she will be able to kill the monster in one go using her lightning skill. However, it seems like even the top one of the academy is no match for this deadly enemy. Before the monster can even land a hit on Liana, Will immediately gets her out of danger. However, along the way, something so dear and important to Will suddenly breaks. Seeing this one thing break to pieces dumbstruck Will more than he ever imagined. Now the question is, what will he do to cope with it? Will he scrub it off? Or will this be the reason he'll truly show his real powers? The moment that Liana and Will hit the ground, the party immediately checks up on them, asking if they are okay or not. Thankfully, Will is able to use his floating magic, so the impact of their fall isn't that fatal. However, it seems like while others are concerned about the two, Will's mind is preoccupied as the thing so important to him got broken to pieces in the process. Since the monster on the other side is slowly breaking free from the ice Julius created, There is no doubt that it will be coming after them again the soonest. As a result, Liana asks everyone to retreat immediately, as she will now buy time for everyone to escape. Since the situation has now gone worse than expected, Liana decides to hold the enemy off even if it costs her life. Hearing Liana say such a thing infuriates Collet, since this fight is after all not Liana's battle to take on her own. But till now, Liana still thinks that she is the one who failed to finish that thing off, which makes it her responsibility to defeat it no matter what. However, Collet wouldn't allow her to do such a thing at all, since this is a life and death situation, which is something that should be taken care of seriously and not harshly. So Liana went on to ask to tell the reason why the Owensaw family is short-lived. According to her, it is so that they, as knights, can act as shields for their comrades. So no matter how much Collet tries to stop her, Liana will do as she wishes, as this is said to be their sacred duty as knights. With that being said, since Liana can't bear to ignore her duty for the sake of herself, Ignore goes on to volunteer that he will keep her company, as he also finds another reason that he respects other than Liana. The monster then roars, with its noise echoing throughout the floor. As Ignore and Liana rush towards the monster, the group now doesn't know what to do next. So Julius went on to state that they have no choice but to run away, since Ignore and Liana will most likely die in the process anyway. With that said, Julius plans to run away so that their deaths won't be in vain, if at least the rest of them live on. He keeps on gaslighting himself into believing that there is no shame in it, since abandoning the two of them and running away is their only option. Then, all of a sudden, Will asks Sion to punch him, as he can't stop shaking after Elfie's goggles got broken. Since Will can't contain his tears himself, he goes on to cry himself out while stating that he is useless without Elfie's goggles, which turn out to be his promised item. Since Will is now in chaos inside, Sion grabs on to grab his shirt and starts shouting at him, saying that Will should not be scared since he is after all the one who put them up to this, the one who gave them hope that they will be able to come out of this dungeon alive. So Will has no right to mess up since he is after all the reason why everyone kept fighting, even if the chances of winning are very slim. With that said, even though Liana and Ignore are going to end up dead, Will still has the audacity to tell Sion that he is scared. As a result, to snap Will back to reality, Sion punches him one after another. Sion is actually right, considering Will should take responsibility for dragging everyone to their deaths. As Sion's punches keep coming one after another, Will has now finally woken up back to reality. Now that his shaking had already stopped, Will thanked Sion for his help. Even though he is still staggering from the pain caused by Sion's punches, Will stands up, grabs his sword, wipes the blood on his face, and goes on to ask Collet to take care of Kiki, as he will now fight the monster face to face. As he dashes to the front with much fierceness, Sion can't help but wonder what's the real deal with Will. Collet then answers Sion, teary-eyed, stating that Will has always been scared. However, it seems like Sion doesn't believe such a thing. There's no way anyone would believe that at all. So Collet continued saying that Sion wouldn't know the feeling at all since he can cast fire spells off from afar with the wand. But it is different for a sword wielder, as they have to step in and get close to opponents who are bigger and stronger than they are. So imagining it itself is already terrifying. What more it is if he is the one who is in Will's shoes. There's no doubt that Will is a scaredy cat at heart. However, no matter how frightened he is, no matter how pathetic he looks, he is simply a coward who is too scared to run away. And that is the very thing people call courage. With that being said, Collet will now fight as well, even if it may also cost her life. Seeing Collet build the courage to help shocked Sion, as he never expected that Collet would ever do such a thing. Meanwhile, back to Will, at the back of his mind, the enemy's defenses are ironclad, so to begin with, he already knows that it will be hard for him to land a proper hit because of its mobility, which belies its gigantic size. With that said, it is now all down to those wings that are integral to its mobility and defense. The only way to defeat the Grand Duke is to cut off its wings and bring it down to the ground. Despite it being hard, Will keeps on believing in himself, knowing that he is the only one everyone's leaning on right now. On top of that, Liana and the rest can't fight anymore. So with the help of Collet, the two will do their best to defeat the Grand Duke no matter what. As the enemy roars so loudly, Will can't help but get scared in the process. Now that he no longer has the goggles and his scaredy cat armor, he's no doubt scared to death. But he is much more afraid of losing someone so dear to him. With that said, with his own swordsmanship skills, he went on to attack the Grand Duke with all his might. Moreover, since he now doesn't have Kiki's help, he needs to ensure that he doesn't get hit at all, since with just a single blow, he might actually find himself already dead. But thankfully, that attack is one he has already seen before. Since Will already knew what to do next, he went on to attack from above while Collet used her wand to cast a spell with all that she had, all for the sake of Will and those who depended on them right now. However, it seems like no matter how much they try to do their best and defeat the Grand Duke, the monster always has something up his sleeves, causing Kullet to fall. Now that the Grand Duke is already furious, he went on to open up his wing, revealing its true power. As he flaps his wings, it is revealed that Will has somehow done a great job destroying one of the mighty and powerful wings in existence. Moreover, to make sure that they already put an end to this long fight, Scion also steps in and uses his firepower to take down the monster from above. As Scion chants his spell, the scorching heat starts to engulf the Grand Duke from every direction. However, what really made Will shocked is the fact that Scion used the Guardian as a shield to charge in, indicating that Scion has somehow learned how to use his skills now, more than he did before. As Scion gets blown away by his own attack, Will immediately jumps in to help him. Although Scion already did his very best, the monster is still not going down even with that harsh attack. Even after taking an upper tier spell at point blank range, he's still standing and kicking like nothing happened. This made the party realize that the Grand Duke is indeed a monster that is hard to defeat, even if one is already strong enough. During this moment, the group finally realizes that the wand can't win against it, and so is the sword. This made them wonder what they were supposed to do right now. Then, suddenly, a clacking sound caught Will's attention. As he grabs the crystal, his eyes almost pop out when he realizes that it is a wand and a sword in one. Will then suddenly realizes that there was a time in the past when the higher-ups decided to make an item that could protect the world. A wand and sword in one, saving all of mankind. As a result, Will immediately informs Scion about it, sending the crystal to him without wasting any second at all. Using his Ignis Lu technique, Scion does as Will asks him to do. On the other hand, to combine his and Scion's power, Will also let out his Wisp Magic sword technique. As a result, the once ordinary-looking sword Will had is now inflamed with scorching fire. At this moment, Will is finally equipped with the appropriate power he needs to defeat the Grand Duke. Although his field of vision is now red, he is still nonetheless brimming with power. With that being said, without any hesitation, Will rushes towards the Grand Duke, this time not afraid to fall as if his body is now urged on by the torrent of power coursing through him. And on top of that, he suddenly found himself muttering its name. As the loading completes, Ignis Wisp, aka the Red Nobility magic sword, has finally been born. The sword is so powerful that with only one swing, the Grand Duke is already sliced into two. Everyone in the party is both amazed and shocked at what they saw, as the once notorious enemy has now been taken down with only one blow. However, after a while, Will noticed that the power was left inside him and his sword had now gone back to normal. He himself can't even believe what in the world has just happened. But one thing is for sure, Will has finally defeated the Grand Duke. Despite the fact that they had struggled in the beginning, everyone, especially Kullet and Liana, is happy and amazed at the same time that Will has finally fulfilled his promise to get them to safety no matter what. However, the celebration was only brief as the stumps of hordes of evil sentinels were already echoing around the floor. Ignore thought that the monsters could have rushed over after hearing their lord's death cry. Kullet is now on the verge of crying since Will and Scion just defeated the enemy and there's more coming. But what's worse is the fact that the party no longer has any strength left to fight. On the other hand, Edward Sensei and Wagner are now already in a hurry, since it's no good if they don't make it on time. As Julius is about to get attacked by one monster, a group of people then comes into the scene, chanting a high-order annihilation magic. Everyone, including Wagner and Edward, who are now already so close, is shocked to see that the man who helped the party is none other than Mastelius Noah, the king of the Magiawenda, as well as the strongest one. Liana even asks what the hell a man like him is doing on the said floor. At the back of Will's mind, the old man might be on his way back from an expedition, since he is using equipment meant for the deeper floors of the dungeon. The old man then went on to state that he had bestowed the blessing of the light onto those who had stood firm against the darkness of the dungeon. And just like that, the party realized that they were finally safe at last. With that said, Julius and the others' cheers echoed throughout the dungeon. All the mages and even the elf trembled in joy and bowed in reverence. In this situation where everyone's attention was directed toward the Light Monarch alone, Will's eyes were drawn to one person. One of the old man's men then went on to talk to Will, asking him his name, as did Will to him. As the strange man shows off his face, he goes on to introduce himself as Finn, and the two then shake hands for their unexpected encounter. Meanwhile, somewhere around the dungeon, the enemies are still on the loose. They are now talking amongst themselves, stating that retrieving what they came for as swiftly as possible was the right choice, as they wouldn't have been able to recover the thing, which turned out to be a peculiar-looking sword, if they were pursued after by the Academy's authorities. After all, one of the enemies would much prefer not to run into those guys, as it is indeed such a pain in the head. What is more important for them now is the fact that they were able to complete the mission successfully, All they need to do is celebrate with a party from hell. As days passed, the students went back to their classrooms. During one of Wagner's classes, he went on to inform the others about what had happened during the activity. No one could deny the fact that many of the students have not yet sorted out their emotional turmoil, but nonetheless, they cannot allow all of them to grind to a standstill. The end of another year draws close, and for those who are in their 6th year, this is quite literally their final test. With that being said, the first day of the graduation finals has finally come, and they need to pass it no matter what if they want to graduate on time. Meanwhile, the abnormal turn of events brought the combined hands-on exercise to a close. There were 11 deaths in total, and all of them were academy professors. Through the efforts of the surviving faculty members, there were 0 student casualties. Based on eyewitness testimony regarding the perpetrators of the incident, wanted posters were already posted, but no clues have yet to be found. Without waiting for the wounds suffered by many to heal, the hands of time tick on. Now the only thing that everyone should do is be aware of their surroundings and make sure to always be prepared for the worst to come. Things in the academy now will get even worse in the future. The final test for the 6th year students is still ongoing, and everyone is shocked to find out that Will lost no points, beating even Liana, who is known to be at the top of the class. It seems like everyone finds it weird that the once loser learners they have termed are now getting the same grade as most of them. From full acquisition of written and hands-on credits, for a student who is not simply bad but incompetent to advance to the tower is unprecedented indeed. Professor Wagner, on the other hand, is also happy at the fact that the student he spent all his effort helping is now about to realize his dream. Eliza Sensei is also happy to see Wagner achieving his goal of helping his students. However, it seems like Wagner doesn't want to rush things out, since there are still plenty of tests Will needs to go through. So until the exams are near its end, Wagner doesn't want to get so complacent about it. Although there is no denying that Will is now the talk of the town, it somehow also caused him to get a bit more pressured into doing great during the exams. Since the last written test is tomorrow, Will is seen studying non-stop, trying to memorize everything in one go. But it seems like the combined hands-on exercise was rescheduled and was held in parallel with the finals, and since Will has defeated Nabrus just yesterday, he is already good to go in the eyes of everyone. However, instead of thanking himself for what he just did, Will went on to thank Liana and the rest instead, since he thinks that he was able to acquire all the hands-on credits because of that. That is why he wouldn't let everyone's kindness go to waste no matter what. On top of that, it seems like he was able to get around 5 credits from Edward Sensei's remedial class, and it is known that the last test was worth around 6 credits. Even though he now only needs 1 more credit to advance to the tower, he still can't let his guard down. It seems like everyone, including Colette, has noticed that Will has been working too hard ever since the day they defeated the Grand Duke. So Colette wonders, why is that so? Will then went on to state that he was able to meet a small-sized man on the expedition team they were able to come across in the dungeon. And it seems like Julius also knows who that man is. According to him, Finn is part of a race of short people who cannot use magic, but have accumulated generations of knowledge about the dungeon. Since the time of the Magic Queen, they've been contracted by the tower to help with the dungeon exploration as guides. It is said that it is impossible to advance through the deeper floors without them. Hearing this made Will realize that Finn Clan is indeed the same with that power, aka magic sword, but that feeling he felt during that moment was just unexpected. So Will wondered what in the world was that. Meanwhile, in the principal's office, Finn is seen telling the head of the school about their expedition on the 49th floor, where they are able to catch a guy carrying something so valuable. As a result, Finn decided to take it to the principal as a souvenir. The principal then asks Finn if it is indeed the weapon of the reported mage killer. Finn then went on to explain that they were able to run into some suspicious people on the 40th floor and engage them in battle right there and then. About 20 of the high mages on the expedition team were killed. They weren't opponents the expedition team could hold back against, so they decided to kill them all. But that said mage killer isn't something spawned by the dungeon naturally. For Finn, those guys are conducting experiments down there. This shocked the principal, as that simply meant that the opponents had created weapons by combining a variety of materials, including those collected in the deeper floors of the dungeon. With that being said, Finn is now just waiting for Aaron to send him to investigate this matter once more, as it seems that there are some unsavory characters lurking behind the scenes. So Finn has no choice but to investigate it himself. However, that isn't even the main topic yet, as Finn is somehow greatly interested to know more about Will from the principal herself. He then went on to remind the principal that the only students the academy has jurisdiction over are the wands, and the swords are supposed to be his. So to avoid any misunderstanding, the principal went on to reason now that it is because Will is a student of the academy, so it was only natural that his safety is put first no matter what. But above all, no one can deny the fact that Will is so obsessed with the wand. To reach the Magia Wenda, Will intends to go up the tower no matter what. This is somehow a shock to Finn since he never heard of a sword aspiring to become a wand before. Although Finn will allow the Academy to have Will for the time being, everyone should already expect that Finn will be meddling in Will's affairs from now on, as it is all for the sake of becoming heavens. Meanwhile, although the night has already fallen, Colette is shocked to see that Will is still studying. Since he hadn't had dinner yet, Colette went on to bring him something to drink and eat. However, it seems like Will is already dead asleep, so Colette just left the food on the table. But it seems like she fell in love with Will's charisma and face while sleeping, that she almost kissed him if not for Julius, who entered the scene all of a sudden. Seeing Will push himself so hard just to get to the tower causes Colette to hate Magia Wenda so much. Because of the curse Alvis Vina placed on him, Will has been chasing after the Ice Princess all this time, and yet she does nothing but wait in the tower. Meanwhile, in the tower, the other wands are inviting Alfaria to join them since she always keeps herself isolated from everyone. Then Zio, the Lightning Lord's wand, enters the scene telling both Alfaria and Elnor to get lost. It seems like the wands are now in one place since the Terminaria, aka Boundary Festival, is now fast approaching and everyone needs to make preparations for that tedious ritual. The year is ending and that barrier is also almost gone, so it is important for all the wands to do their very best this time around. On the other hand, back at the Academy, it is already the last day of the exams, and Edward Sensei has already prepared everything. Everyone is worried that they might not make it, considering it is the Serpent's exam they are talking about. As Edward Sensei enters the room, everyone quiets down, listening attentively to what the professor is about to say. To the surprise of many, Edward's final test only consists of one question, and all 6 credits will be awarded to those who can answer this one question. With that, everyone finally begins taking their exams. As they open the booklet, the question, "What is magic?" unfolded in front of them. Edward then went on to state that based on the students' respective attributes, they can answer the question whichever way they like. This is a question that asks for a written description of the conditions for invoking and using magic, the process of connecting to the magic that they usually do subconsciously. The question is simply asking the students to explain that feeling in words. However, as everyone knows, it is certainly not that easy to put those feelings into words, but the students think that they might just be able to answer it somehow. However, it seems like Will would never be able to. With that being the case, the incompetent is now in great trouble. Despite that, Will went on to try his best to answer the question no matter what, since this is the only way he would be able to reach the tower. So he went on to state that for him, magic is an aspiration, a miracle he can't reach no matter what. It is something both beautiful and cruel. Magic is something that comes after hard work, and he believes that so long as he doesn't give up, there is power that surpasses even magic. Immediately right after the exam, Wagner furiously asks Edward what he was thinking about putting that question on the exam. Edward then explains that all he did was ask about the most important and basic foundation for mages and those headed for the tower. That as much as 40% of the students got it wrong is truly a lamentable thing, and it seems like Will is also part of that list, since for Edward, there's no reason for a sword to step into the House of Wands at all. Moreover, wrestling with a dream that will never come true from his grasp is just painful, so failing Will is the least Edward could do to ease his suffering. However, it seems like despite that, Will would keep moving forward no matter what. After finding out about the result, Will can't help but get sad about it. So to help himself cope with it, he tends to spend some of his time alone now. To make his friend feel a little better, Rosti went on to inform Will that he had already fixed his goggles. However, it seems like it doesn't help at all, since Will is still drowned with sad emotions. However, Will already knew from the start that he wouldn't be able to answer that question. So to set such a question on the most important exam of the year just shows how mean Edward Sensei is to him. Will has worked hard since the beginning, so failing when his success was already near was just so devastating for him. With much concern, Rosti immediately comforts Will as he starts sobbing. To make Will feel a bit better, Rosti went on to assure him that no matter what happens, no matter the amount of problems they encounter, he will always be there for Will no matter what. As Will cries his eyes out, on the other side of the academy, everyone is celebrating as the festival of Terminaria has finally come. Terminaria is a symbol of peace. People come and go with smiles on their faces after attending the said celebration. As everyone enjoys themselves, Liana, Ignore, and Colette are now on the search for Will. It seems like they have already checked every nook and corner of the academy, but still hasn't seen a single sign as to where Will could have gone. Then out of nowhere, the ever grumpy and cocky Julius enters the scene, saying that it is already obvious that Will has already left the academy, considering most students who cannot advance to the tower start to lose their hearts and leave of their own will. So Julius tells the three to stop it with the search and just leave the incompetent alone. However, it seems like Ignore wouldn't allow Julius to insult Will that way. As the fight starts to escalate, Julius tells Ignore that no matter how they look at it, in this magic academy, magic is everything. So no matter how capable Will may be in the dungeon, there is no place for a sword in this place. After a good minute, Wagner-sensei passes by. When he notices that the kids are looking for Will, he immediately tells everyone to go already, since he will be looking for Will himself. After all, it is their last day of the year, so they should all go cut loose at the Boundary Festival and have some fun. Meanwhile at the festival, Crailwee, one of the elite high mages in the tower, went on to do the introduction for this year's festival. She first describes what Terminaria really is. According to her, it is the Great Barrier that protects the sky up above them. Long ago, mankind had no knowledge of the sky, and this world was enclosed in darkness. With the invaders from the heavens spreading destruction throughout the land, many lives were lost in the process, and right when despair seemed to have engulfed everyone, under the command of their progenitor, the Magic Queen Mercedes, 5 great mages sealed off the sky, repelling the invaders. And on this day of the festival, that event was already 500 years ago. The Great Barrier made by the Magia Wenda created a boundary separating everyone from the heavens that continues to protect everyone to this day. So everyone celebrates it, as it is the reason why they are all still alive. Meanwhile, Iris knows that the barrier's safeness is not guaranteed at all, since its duration is only a year. At the end of every year, a new Great Barrier is put up. This simply means that if the Great Barrier goes down, worse things would happen as a result. That is why the mages always make sure that failure is not part of their options. During this day of the festival, the Flame faction is on guard to check if there is anything unusual in the sky. After clearing everything, the Magia Wenda is now taking the stage to get the boundary party started. As they showed themselves to everyone, people started screaming at the top of their lungs. Now that they have already caught the people's attention, Crailwee went on to remind everyone that they must not forget that the invaders from the heavens are still targeting their world. That this Eden is even now under threat, so no matter how much the way they may falter, they must hold up the sky and ward off evil. And just like that, the ritual has finally begun. Using the wands of the Magia Wenda, a new barrier is put up. However, as everyone celebrates this new year, the Flame faction notices something suspicious. As the magic circles started to appear one after another, monsters followed in the end. This immediately caused havoc and panic among everyone. Knowing that rebuilding the Great Barrier has exhausted the Magia Wenda's magic power, the enemy knows that the Great Five won't be able to do anything for a while. So, this is great timing for a slaughter party. As the chaos kept on continuing, with monsters killing children and women, even from afar, the circles were so evident, and after Will saw it, he was shocked to see that it was the same gate as they saw on the 15th floor. Meanwhile, in the plaza, everyone is on the run, as Dinabolo starts attacking everyone they see. The mages then started working, assisting everyone and coming up with a plan to stop this sudden chaos. Crailwee, together with the other mages, went on to start the incantation for the wall barrier. While Crailwee does her job, her guardians will then act as vanguards, so the Flame faction then enters the fight, killing every monster they come across with. Since things have now spiraled out of control, the high mages of the tower also jump in as well. To think that any would dare desecrate the central city, the home of the Magia Wenda, is just unbelievable. That is why the mages will make sure to trace the source of the magic circle no matter what. However, it seems like what the mages didn't expect is the fact that the monsters are actually invincible themselves. No matter how much they try to kill it, the monsters keep coming back, as if their magic has no effect against it. Then the worst they are trying to avoid finally happened. Soldiers and mages started dying one after another. What was supposed to be a brief fight now turned into a battle. As it turns out, for the first time in history, magic doesn't work against their enemy, since their opponent is none other than the mage killers themselves. At this point, the mages can't stop the monsters' invasion anymore, and what's worse is the fact that the tower garrison has been half destroyed. So there's a big chance that things will start going sideways from now on. At the back of the Academy's principal's mind, this whole situation is not carried out by a single person at all, as it is just too well planned. An attack at this time simply means that the enemy's aim is something that the Academy has. As the principal thought, a horde of monsters started appearing in the Academy. So as soon as possible, she told her guards to protect the tower no matter what, as the enemy's aim was none other than the Academy itself. While the chaos was still going on, the higher-ups started to conduct a meeting in line with the current events. According to one of them, deploying the Great Barrier has significantly depleted the magic power of every one of the Magia Wenda, so they have no choice but to retreat for now. On top of that, the Terminaria is only one day in the year when the Magia Wenda are all weakened, So the five ones don't know who are the people behind all this and what are they exactly aiming for. Since things were already getting out of control on the ground, some of the officers suggested that they should head over as reinforcement, since if they don't do anything, innocent people will be killed in the process. That is why they should all bring the power of the Magia Wenda to bear and protect everyone. However, it seems like the king of the Magia Wenda wouldn't allow such a thing, since that could simply cost them their defeat. For now, Mastelius Noah, the king of the Magia Wenda, orders the five not to leave the tower no matter what, even if it means for the Magia Wenda to watch innocent lives get taken away. They have no choice but to obey orders no matter what. Since if they lose one of the wands and the Great Barrier goes down, the invaders from the heavens will descend upon them any second. It would not just be Regardin, the central city of magic, that will go down, but the whole world itself will get burned to ashes, and that is the one thing they all must prevent no matter what. Meanwhile, back on the ground, the enemies have now finally noticed that the Magia Wenda aren't coming out. Even though they have dangled a bait in front of the five, they still haven't come out yet. So the enemies decided to just enjoy this mass massacre, as the screams of innocence were like music to their ears. Since the higher-ups would not be helping at all, the students are now left on their own. It is up to them if they will finish this fight with victory, or if it will be the end of the world. But one thing is for sure, Will would definitely join this battle, with much dedication to help others and save as many people as he could as possible. Now the only thing we need to do is wait and see if Will become the superhero everyone hasn't expected at all. As the chaos continues, Will can't help but wonder why the world is so unkind and cruel to swords like him, who don't have any ability to use magic. Although he has been quite unbothered about it for quite some time now, he still can't deny the fact that he did resent some people one way or another. However, he would never have wanted a tragedy like this to happen at all. With many innocent lives now taken away, all he wants is for all to have the peace they wanted. That is why, with the best that he could, he made it a goal to save as many people as he can. Since the more scared he is, the more people will die in the process. Thankfully, he is not alone in this battle, since with the help of Rosti, the two of them fight off the monster the best way they know possible, with Rosti using her wand, while Will with his sword. On top of that, Rosti also makes sure to analyze the whole situation more carefully, and based on his observation, Will should target the ones with weapons first, since the enemies without weapons can be dealt with even by mages like him. Hearing this, Will then immediately does as Rosti asks, rushing toward the mage killer without hesitation and any sign of fear. On the other hand, seeing Will fight off the monster hand in hand shocked Iris. At this point, Iris is already starting to wonder if Will could actually defeat the mage killer or not. Although she knows Will had the capabilities of a warrior, she knows to herself that there is only so much a single person can do, and the fact that there are a lot of mage killers scattered, Will could only kill half of them max. That is why it is important for help to come as soon as possible, or all of Regardin will be wiped out by the end. Since things have spiraled out of control, Iris's leader went on to delegate authority to her to mobilize the dwarves and stop the savagery going on. Hearing this, Iris immediately starts with her incantation. After doing so, she informs everyone that the prohibition on dwarves has already been lifted, so mages and dwarves now are obligated to work together to wipe out the monsters as soon as possible. However, it seems like with or without the prohibition, the dwarves are ready to risk their lives to help as many people as they can. On the other hand, Professor Edward then tells the mages to leave the armed monsters to the dwarves, and that mages should only target the ones without weapons. Since the mages are now shorthand, Professor Edward asks the students to contribute to the effort as well. The students are only asked to stall the monsters and become the ones that protect the people. However, it seems like the students don't have enough confidence in themselves. Even if their fight hadn't started yet, they all already look defeated. But there is one student from the academy who wouldn't back down on anything at all, and there's no doubt that she is shocking everyone with her skills. However, despite her looking so flawlessly good using her skill, Iris is in deep worry since even with enchant magic, she can't defeat the monster with a single blow, making her realize that monsters on the deeper floors are indeed out of this world. On top of that, she also noticed when she is within a certain distance of that weapon, her magic fizzles out, making her contemplate as to whether the monster nullifies magic or absorbs it. Either way, one thing is for sure, that these are indeed mage killers. Since she can't do this that easily, Iris tries to think of other ways that could help her overcome it. Meanwhile, Colette rushes towards Liana, asking her not to be reckless. On the other side, Ignore is working on one of his spells, Alv's Linger, a spell that can summon the realm of the King's Forest. However, even this powerful spell can also be nullified by the monsters. At this point, there's no way the mages can hold out until the dwarves arrive. On top of that, once Liana, which is the team's vanguard, runs out of strength, there is a big chance that they will all get killed in an instant. That is why even if they still want to fight, they have no other choice but to flee immediately. But it seems like Sion has noticed something crucial. Based on his observation, the enemy's movement slowed down for a moment when erasing magic. In that case, he asks Ignore and Julius to fire off as many spells as they can. It doesn't matter if they have no effect. The team's main goal is to pin the enemies down as soon as possible. As the three don't stop firing, signs of the monsters getting down keep getting apparent. That is why, under such circumstances, the other monsters will necessarily use that one as a shield. And when they do, Call It will use her magic to smash them all in one go. As the rumble crashes on every monster there is, Julius gets worried, since the others topped a monument of a former Magia Wenda just to execute the attack. On the other hand, Ignore noticed that objects without any magic flowing through them can't be nullified. That is why Liana plans to throw as many stones as they can to the monsters. She also ordered the Earth Mages to lay down a barrage and turn the unknown into the known. Seeing the kids do well in the fight somehow makes the instructors quite proud. They can't deny the fact that those who have been accepted into the tower this year are indeed very talented. So for now, while the dwarves are on their way, every Earth Mage tries to fight back as much as they can until help arrives. However, some of the mages can't deny the fact that it is so vexing on their part that they must rely on the help of the dwarves. But since this is a state of emergency, they really have no choice but to work hand in hand. The enemies who are watching from afar are quite amazed at how brave the students are becoming. It just hurts that these people who are manufacturing the Slame, aka Magic Hunter, happened to cross paths with the expedition. It seems like the Slame was recovered by the Masters Noah and the little one in question, which could be Finn. Not only were they quick to throw the dwarves into battle, but the response of some of the mages was pretty quick as well. At the back of the enemy's mind, if the upper college were to analyze the Slame and come up with a countermeasure, it would be a disaster. Despite still not being able to mass produce much of them, they'd be forced to move up their plans. If their cards hadn't been exposed, they would have launched a perfect surprise attack. Meanwhile, Will, who is now on his way to fight with the monsters, notices that there is yet another gate popping out. As one of the mage killers gets out of the portal, Will is immediately thrown off to multiple buildings within just a few seconds. The loud sound of Will's impact was even heard by the other students, making his friends worry for his well-being. On the other hand, inside the dungeon, it seems like Finn has caught one of the culprits. However, to his surprise, it seems like he is lured into the depths of the dungeon so that the attack on the surface is executed swiftly. Back to the battle above, Will has been tossed around by the monster, one building after another. So strong and fast that Will doesn't even have any time to react to the attacks. Since this is such an impossible strength to have, he starts to wonder as to where the monster got this. But what really worries him is the fact that this monster might actually be stronger than the Grand Duke. Meanwhile, Creolwi, who is observing the whole situation from above, is shocked to see that a Devende, a 40th floor's notorious monster, is currently on the surface, attacking everyone it sees. It is known that it is a monster that has slain even past members of the Magia Wenda, and it seems like it wasn't even that easy for the enemy to shove the monster into the gate themselves. That is why the enemy is expecting it to really give everyone a hell of an experience. Going back to Will, who is now up against Devenda alone, it is pretty obvious that he is definitely struggling to cope with the monster's strength. Even though he is avoiding direct hits, he still gets sent flying like a piece of paper. It is not an opponent he can engage in a head-to-head sword fight with. The only thing he can do now is to run away as much as possible. But seeing his fellow students getting attacked, Will can't take it as he immediately rushes to help and protect them no matter what, shocking his classmates with his braveness and strength. However, at the price of helping others, Will finds himself in great pain and agony. As the monster is about to smash him to pieces, the dwarves arrive on time, protecting him immediately. Now that the whole gang was already present, the dwarves went on to state that they would grind that monster into a pulp in no time. Meanwhile, Iris then tells every mage that they should all converge on the southern part of the city where Will and the dwarves are. From the moment that the dwarves destroy the mage killer, all present mages should launch an all-out attack. Although it may look like the mages and the dwarves have the upper hand, it is not actually the case, since that is how the enemy exactly planned everything. As it turns out, the whole thing was a trap, and Edward noticed it first, so he ordered everyone to absorb their magical elements back. However, it seems like it is already too late. As it turns out, the unique special of the Devende, also known as the Supreme King of Killing, is that it can absorb a monster's magical elements. In other words, it can devour its own kind to become extraordinarily strong. This is such a bad sight, and for them all to survive, they need to stop the monster from absorbing magical elements as much as possible. However, it's already too late, since even the dwarves are now taken down in one go. The screams of agony and pain started to echo, as the Devende finally reached its final form. At this point, the mage's magic is ineffective against it. The dwarves' brute strength won't work either. Realizing that the large number of monsters were all sacrifices made Will speechless, as Regardant's efforts to defend itself turned out to be a trap so that the enemy could strengthen their trump card. The number of lives taken away this day is nothing to the enemy, since the party for them is the ritual. The city is its altar, and the outcome will be the slaying of the Magiawenda. Realizing that the monster is too strong for both the dwarves and mages to stand a chance with, Will only thinks of one thing to stop the monster, and that is to use that power. Risto then enters the scene, telling Will that he should have his sword. However, before he can even cast the spell, the monster has already cut his hands in half. However, instead of crying in pain, he calmly tells Kiki to find Collet while he protects Will. At this moment, Will already knows what he needs to do. No matter how angry he gets, he can't win at all. And no matter how calm he stays, no tactic he can think of will work. Be it knowledge or wisdom, the skill with the sword that he has acquired, or his insignificant feelings towards Elfie. In the face of cruel reality, none of them can stand up against it. Then if that is the case, he is incompetent after all. As he tries to stand up and fight, Will has a clear view of his friend Rosti getting killed by that very monster. Before his death, Rosti went on to state that he would always be there for Will, no matter what. And just like that, yet another important person in his life has been taken away from him. Before Will gets killed, Wagner arrives on time to help him. Sobbing his eyes out, Will can't contain his emotions anymore. He even still tries to save his friend who is now obviously dead. So Wagner tries to make him realize that it is already too late to act so harshly. Meanwhile, back in the tower, the other Magiawenda are now furious at the fact that they can't even do a thing at all. Since Zio can't take it anymore, he went on to state that he will be going to battle now. Hearing the mages cry and wail while dying helplessly is so useless for Zio. However, the most useless there are right now are none other than the Magiawenda themselves, who abandoned these people to die on their own. The other Magiawenda then explain everything to Zio to make him understand the situation more. Just like what Eren Sama has already explained, if they, the Magiawenda, were to fall, the barrier would collapse. If that happens, none other than the invaders from the heavens will surely return this world to ashes. Even they don't stand much of a chance against that thing in the state they are in now, so at least they need to wait until they regain their magic power. That is why for the time being, the best thing they can do for everyone is stay put and wait until they regain their energy. However, it seems like Zio is really determined that he is even willing to let go of his title as Magiawenda, all for the sake of saving those people who are screaming for help on the surface. That is why the other Magiawenda has no choice but to tell him that if he doesn't go back to his seat, they don't have any other choice but to keep him by force. While the two keep on fighting, the other Magiawenda are still observing the whole situation. It seems like the battle on the surface is now all but lost, and the Magiawenda are not on the same page. At this rate, Alfaria has no choice but to go to Eren and ask him to rescind his orders since they are just wasting their time in the tower. However, it seems like Eren has already decided that he won't change his mind no matter what. With that said, Alfaria has no choice but to disobey orders, all for the sake of saving Will and the people dear to her. And if anyone gets in her way, she will surely take them down too. Meanwhile, back at the surface, the battle lines have already collapsed because of the Devende. The remaining Dinabolos have started to push the mages back. Not even the dwarves can do anything to stop the whole situation from worsening, but the only hope they have now is none other than Will himself. However, it seems like the child they are all hoping to save them all also needs saving himself as well. With the sudden death of Rosti, Will can't help but blame himself for what has happened, since this is just like what happened when Elfie was taken away from him. He then starts to question if it is because he can't use magic, that he can't protect Elfie, Rosti, or anyone else. Hearing all this made Wagner furious, since for him, Will is perfectly fine on his own. And that is why he needs to pull himself together, since he is the only hope everyone has now. Even from afar, the enemies already noticed that Will reeks of trouble for them and their whole plan. That is why he plans to kill both Will and Wagner in one fell swoop. Kiki, on the other hand, has also arrived where Collet is. Seeing the splash of blood on Kiki's fur, Collet immediately knows something bad has happened. If that is the case, Collet immediately rushes to look for Will, since it simply means he is in deep trouble. Using Kiki's sense of smell, Collet tries to track Will as soon as possible. Seeing Collet leaving, Sion rushes to come with her while the others are left to take care of the monsters left behind. Meanwhile, it seems like one of the enemies is now getting tired of being left alone, while everyone has something to do on their own. With that being said, he went on to release yet another deadly monster for fun. Since the new monster is heading to the tower, Krailwi tries her best to not let it near the central floors, since that monster could very well kill the Magiawenda in one go. Since the situation now has gotten a lot worse, Edward tells the dwarves to do whatever it takes to destroy the Devende Mage Killer. However, it seems like in the eyes of the dwarves, it is already a suicide attack as their people are already battered from acting as walls for the mages. But it seems like Edward doesn't care if the dwarves die, all for the sake of the children. However, it doesn't mean that he sees his life as more worth it than theirs. Since in this situation, Edward, his life is worth less than any dwarves there. He himself could also sacrifice himself for the sake of saving the children, no matter what. To make the dwarves agree to his plan, Edward tells everyone that they will be compensated for what they did that day. That is why he is simply asking for them to give up their lives for now. Without any choice, since this is after all for the children, the leader of the dwarves let his men gather, asking for them to head for the center of the city as soon as possible. Meanwhile, back to Collet and Scion, who is now on their way to Will, they somehow come across the said monster everyone is trying to kill. Now the question is, will they be able to get out alive, or will this be their end? On the other hand, back in the Rigerton Magic Academy, it seems like everyone now is in a panic since Edward is injured, while Wagner can't be contacted no matter how much they try to. On top of that, the battle lines in the western part of the city have also collapsed, together with the academy, which is now full of holes from battle. The High Mage unit in the northeast has been wiped out as well. The situation is the worst. It's taking everything they have just to protect the people, and yet they were unable to push the enemy back. Due to the dwarves joining the battle, the number of mage killers has been reduced, but they can't stop the Devende no matter how much they try. Every battlefield is now in dire straits, and no one can scrounge up enough fighting strength. With just a few dwarves remaining, there is no option but to throw their lives away to fend them off. At this rate, the tower will fall along with the whole world. However, in times of despair, it seems like there is still hope remaining. Someone by the name of Finn, who is now standing in a scorching and burning city, asks Iris where the magnificent sword is right now, since they both will put an end to this agonizing battle together with only their sword in hand. Since the enemies are now aiming for Wagner and Will, it was only a matter of time before they both crash-landed on the western edge of the city. But don't get me wrong, Wagner tried his best to fight back the enemy as much as he could, and even the enemy didn't anticipate Wagner would have the guts to try to kill him in that situation. However, it was so unfortunate that Wagner's side, since the enemy was able to gouge it out. Although Wagner did his best to stay alive, in the end, all that he could do was protect Will with everything he had. The moment that Will realizes the result of the whole situation, he keeps frozen for a good minute, as he sees the big hole right through Wagner's chest. Before he runs out of breath, Wagner goes on to tell how apologetic he is that all he can do is rely on Will, since he truly believes that Will is the only person who can save the city from total destruction. However, it seems like Will himself doesn't even believe that he has the ability to do so. After Rosty's death, and now Wagner's, Will has already lost hope in himself, since no matter how much he tries, he keeps getting saved by others. And to make it worse, he can't even protect those people who are important to him. That is why he dearly believes that he can't change anything anymore, that a sword like him can't turn the world on its head. For decades, no one who can't use magic is able to do so. That is why Will is certain that an incompetent like him, who doesn't even know how to cast a simple spell, will never be able to save this dying city. Through this time of hopelessness, Wagner-sensei revealed something that will shock Will. Many people termed Will as incompetent, since he is the only one who can't use magic in the academy. At least, that's what most people know. However, as it turns out, Will actually can use magic, and this magic is something that gives everyone hope. It is known to be one of the most powerful magic there is, making Will a rare find to many. However, before Wagner could even reveal it, his body finally gave up, causing Will to have so many unanswered questions. In this time of despair and agony, Finn enters the scene, looking so amazed at the fact that Will, the insignificant, and Wagner, the silvery light, are seen together hugging each other so tightly. Knowing that Will might be so deadly worried about his professor, Finn went on to assure him that Wagner is fine. As long as his heartbeat is revived, he will come back to life again. Immediately, Will listens to Wagner's chest, and the moment he hears the loud beat, he gently lays Wagner's body on the flat ground. Right after that, Finn went on to ask Will to immediately get up, since the stage for them to work has already been set. Since Wagner wasn't able to explain to Will what his true power is, Finn went on to explain that his magic is something called auto-suggestion. That is why he needs to raise his voice, shout, and encourage himself, since it is a mighty roar that changes lies into truths. However, for Will, such a thing is just a childish ruse that can't save everyone at all. Hearing Will lose hope in himself infuriates Finn so much. So to slap the reality on Will's face, Finn went on to state that those who cannot transform themselves have no chance of turning the world on its head. That is why Will shouldn't say such a ridiculous thing, since sticking and having will on oneself is the way a sword strives to be a wand in this magical world, just like Will did in the past. That is why Finn tells him to get himself back together and recall his origin. After all, the key has already been unlocked. All that he needs to do now is take up the sword, grip it tightly, and embark on a journey in order to cross the dark hills and go beyond the false sky. No matter how much Will denies it himself, he already knows the answer to his questions and the name of the magic that resides in his heart. All that he needs to do now is let it out and show the real power of courage. Hearing such encouraging words somehow gave Will that little push. Now that he has been motivated to have faith in himself for the sake of everyone, now all he needs to do is draw it out as much as he can. As the power of courage started to rush in Will's veins, his whole powerful aura started getting felt around every nook and corner of the city. Everyone from residents to students and professors of the academy is stunned to see the lights rushing through the city right now. Based on Iris's observation, it is the same light seen after slaughtering the monsters one after another. Meanwhile, while Will finally realizes his true strength, Scion and Colette find themselves in great danger. Colette tries to stop Scion from engaging the monster and just runs away. However, it seems like Scion has already decided not to run away this time around. At this point, he can't afford to lose to Will, who has more courage than anyone else. However, at the back of Will's mind, that is not even the case at all. He's just a wrecked guy who has longed to be a wand the whole time. That is why from now on, Will promises himself that he will start being a singular magic sword, packed with power and his own identity. In the end, before Scion can even land a hit on the monster, Will enters the scene, not looking the same as he was before. His power is already evident, and the glow emitting around him undeniably radiates so much. At first, Scion and Colette didn't realize that it was actually Will, considering he now has white hair. However, after seeing how he moves his sword, the two eventually realize that it is indeed Will, the person who was once called incompetent by many in the academy. Now that the Defende had already reached the central floors, everyone is now in a panic, as this may result in more devastating casualties. Back at the academy, since the whole situation has now become worse than it already is, the students and professors ask the principal to evacuate as soon as possible. However, instead of leaving the school behind to fall, the principal went on to cast her own spell called Kerados Akram in hopes that the monsters creating havoc will finally go away. However, to her own surprise, it seems like her power alone can't defeat the strong being. But while everyone is panicking as to what to do next, a bright aura suddenly appears, causing everyone to turn their heads to none other than Will the Incompetent. The whole scene has now become more ominous as two beings with great power are about to clash with one another. Since Will already had enough of all that the monster had done to the city, he made it a goal to make sure that this evil dungeon creature would die no matter what. As the two rushed toward each other, a loud bang sound was heard through the whole city, implying that the great battle for peace had already begun. While everyone wonders what was that loud explosion for, Liana, together with the others, already knows that it is Will who's fighting for them all. So without any hesitation, Liana and Ignore immediately rush towards the central plaza to help Will in the said fight. After seeing the two rushing to send help, Julius has no choice but to come with them as well, despite him already running out of magic power. On the other hand, Magia Wenda is also in shock after seeing Will's true potential, especially Elfie, whose heart now is beating so fast. No one could just believe that Will has evenly matched against an opponent who defeated him once. At this point, everyone starts to wonder what kind of child Will is. If he is indeed someone who is on the same level as everyone, or is he superior to most? Seeing Will fighting the monster single-handedly, some of the students planned to provide him with some backup. However, the majority of the others started to leave Will alone, since magic doesn't work against the enemy after all. So instead of getting in Will's way, it should be better for everyone to just keep their distance for now. However, some of the students felt a sense of guilt themselves for letting someone they used to bully fight for their lives. And the fact that they are planning to run away and leave Will to fight till death makes that feeling worse. But looking at the situation more logically, it is true that there isn't really that much they can do now. So, as everyone started to give up on helping Will, Julius, Scion, Colette, Ignore, and Liana went on to shout at the top of their lungs, telling Will not to lose no matter what. Although they can't do much with their powers, simple verbal support would definitely give Will that extra boost to not lose faith in himself during the battle. Seeing the top students of the academy shout for Will, the other students did the same as well. Meanwhile, Iris, who is attentively watching the whole situation, is amazed at the fact that this moment is such an incredible scene to watch, considering Regarden, the city of magic, is now cheering for an incompetent that the world of magic is trying to pull down before. Hearing everyone cheer for him is like music to Will's ears. So instead of feeling so exhausted, Will is now even more motivated, since this feeling of being acknowledged is something that he has been wishing for all these years. Although there have been times that he has hated the world so much, somewhere in his heart, he has always thought and wished for people to finally see him on the same level as everyone else. That is why, even if these voices are only limited to this one moment, these people who shared with him the courage to fight are the people Will is now willing to protect, even if it may cost him his life. With much dedication, he swung his sword with might and pride. But the question is Will's courage enough to defeat this deadly monster? After that attack of his, it seemed like his sword couldn't withstand the monster's power. No matter how much Will tries to, it seems like things would go sideways from now on. On top of that, in cases where he loses his weapon, the balance of the fight will eventually fall in the monster's favor. Despite that, no sign of giving up is seen in Will's eyes, so there's still a chance that he might still be able to pull this off as long as he keeps moving forward. Meanwhile, back at the tower, the Magiawenda are now observing the intense fight from above. As it intensifies, Alfie decides to step out of the meeting table, so one of the Magiawenda goes on to remind her that they are still not allowed to leave right now. Immediately, Alfie went on to assure everyone that she was not leaving. She just wanted to have a closer look at the situation, so she decided to watch the fight from the window. However, it seems like Alfie has other plans in mind. As she stepped out of the room right through the balcony, she went on to drop her sword directly in Will's direction. Within just a few seconds, Will is able to receive Alfie's help. As the loud boom was heard, Will had already finished loading his new massive weapon, which was none other than the Ice Princess's magic sword. This caused some of the students to get confused, considering it is already known that magic doesn't work against the opponent no matter how much they try to. However, Scion suddenly remembered that was the exact same thing Will did when he fought the Grand Duke. Meanwhile, Will, who is now deeply concentrated on his fight, went on to tell himself that this magic sword can never be stopped, no matter who his opponent is. And just like that, with much faith in his beliefs and capability, Will is able to cut through the monster's chest, completely ignoring the laws of the Mage Killer. Even the enemy who is watching from afar is shocked at what just Will did. Even he doesn't know what kind of rationale is behind the attack. But above all, Will is also able to make the Magiawenda's jaw drop, as the higher-ups finally realize that Will doesn't just have any ordinary power. Instead, he's actually the fifth element himself, the key to Genesis that started the world as depicted in the legend. As it turns out, Finn has already planned to make Will that key, as he had promised the Queen he would do. Now that Will has finally brought both wand and sword together, it was only a matter of time before he was able to defeat the monster in one go. One attack after another, Will mercilessly slices the monster's flesh in whichever direction he wants to. At this point, everyone is shocked to see Will get so strong. His overwhelming power and merciless attacks make him look like he is fighting alongside the Ice Princess herself. Now that things had not gone as planned, the enemy started sending off more monsters in hopes that they turn the tides in favor of them again. However, it seems like Will has already got everything in control now. Since using just one blow from his sword, every monster in the vicinity gets killed in an instant. And just like that, Will has finally made a name for himself, the only person who was able to save the city from great danger. As the fight ends, everyone cheers for Will, some even cry in happiness. But among all, Finn is undeniably happy at the fact that the key he was eyeing for actually did the job flawlessly. Finn himself went on to state that everything is beyond his expectations, but Finn is thankful that after 500 years, the long prologue has finally ended. Now that the curtains are already rising, the wisteria of all wands and swords is finally coming together. A few days after the incident, Regarden was able to recover quickly, thanks to the help of the dwarves. Within a few days, the city will likely be back to its former self in no time. While everyone is busy with their own tasks, Finn is able to come across Iris in the hallway. After arguing for a brief moment, Iris went on to bluntly ask Finn to keep his hands off Will no matter what. If Finn gets involved, the hands of the clock will move forward tremendously in one stroke. And if that happens, the person behind the attacks will not stop anymore. Finn then went on to state that he is quite surprised to hear such a request from Iris, since he has never expected to hear such a thing from the Watcher herself. So to tease Iris a bit, Finn went on to ask her if she had fallen for Will already. Immediately, Iris denies the allegations, saying that none of that is true at all. However, no matter how much begging Iris did, Finn has already decided that he will be taking Will with him no matter what. Moreover, since today is the Academy's graduation ceremony, Will wakes up earlier than usual. His hair has now finally come back to normal. Looking at it, he starts to wonder what may have been the reason why his hair turned white all of a sudden that time. While contemplating, Will happens to look across Rosty's side of the room, making him feel that ache in his heart once again. At the back of his mind, if only Rosty was still alive, he would already have the answer to all of Will's queries. However, this is not the right time to dwell on the past, as this graduation ceremony is one of the most important events in Will's life. As the event was about to start, every student started gathering in the auditorium, attentively listening to what the principal was about to say. Since many lives were lost in the tragedy of the Boundary Festival, the principal wants to offer her condolences and pay her respects to all those who sacrificed their lives to protect the people. But at the same time, she wants everyone to stop hanging their heads from now on. Since the tower was endangered, that tragedy may not be the end, but a wake-up call that signals the coming of disaster. That is why the Academy will now have the responsibility of sending the hopes they have nurtured onward to the future. With that being said, Regarded Magic Academy's graduation ceremony has finally commenced. As the students lined up, Professor Edward went on to distribute their diplomas one by one, and among them was the once incompetent Will. 250 students have completed all the courses of the said year, which is a great number added to the workforce in keeping the city's peace in order. However, aside from graduating, there have also been a few students who will be awarded the Mercedes hat, which symbolizes their right to ascend the tower. One by one, each student was called. From Liana, Ignore, Julius, Sion, Rose, Lunaeus, Jolua, and Collet. For this year, 49 students were able to earn the required credits to be accepted to the tower. However, there's still one more person who met the acceptance criteria at the last minute. Hearing this made everyone anticipate attentively. As everyone kept silent for a while, the principal went on to explain that there were actually two requirements for advancement to the tower. The first is to earn 7,200 credits, and the second is the invention of a new spell. The principal then went on to continue that there is one student from the academy who is able to make a spell that has swept away the despair of many, protected countless lives, and saved the city, which the principal sees as a glorious achievement worth giving honor for. And for those anticipating, the name of that wonderful spell is none other than Courage, made only by Will himself. Edward immediately tries to stop the principal. However, it seems like she has already decided despite some objecting to her decision. Even so, the principal still wanted to see how many were actually in favor. So she went on to ask those who recognized Will's courage as magic to give him a round of applause. And just like that, the clapping sound through the auditorium started to get louder every second. Seeing everyone suddenly change their thoughts of Will shocked Edward so much. So Wagner went on to state that Will should already let go of it, since no matter what the problem is, Will would surely surpass it. After all, he has been put through the ringer by a very scary and kind professor. With that said, since it is the consensus of all present in the hall, Will is now officially accepted into the tower. Now that the graduation ceremony has finally ended, Elfie can't wait to finally see Will once again. With that being said, the year 506 of the magic calendar, the year that will later be called Hope and Demise, finally begins.
It is said that sunset lies at the end of a long journey, and remembering the promise he and Elfie made when they were young gives Will that little push to move forward no matter what. 5 years have passed since then, and he is now on his way to her. Wisdom, sensitivity, and learning. Only those who embody the three teachings of Rigard and Magic Academy are allowed to wear this proof of being a high mage. These colorless gloria, which are also known as starting clothes, are given to those worthy one by one. Blantar Lesseru, the 10th generation owner of the high-end clothing store Lesseru, is the one who with honor has worked on the garments himself. Everyone was quite amazed by how the fit looked, so appealing to all of them. Theon even went on to compliment Blantar for a job well done. As a loyal worker, Blantar couldn't be happier. However, due to the Terminaria incident, the delivery of the clothes got rescheduled till the day of their departure to the tower. But since it can't be helped, Theon just went on to assure Blantar that there is no need to worry at all, considering everyone suffered losses due to the incident, so he doesn't need to worry about such things anymore. With that said, the others started to compliment his work even more, saying that these outfits are indeed lightweight and easy to move around in. On top of that, they are even magic resistant. Although the Academy's cloaks are made of excellent protective gear, these clothes are clearly superior in many ways. While the others are pretty happy and enjoying the moment, Julius looks a little down since a while ago, and Colette was able to notice it. However, since Julius isn't in the mood to talk about it at all, he suddenly shouts at her, causing her to get a little shocked, stumbling and falling. But since Colette is quite a strong, independent woman, she ends up scolding him really well till the end. After her and Julius's brief argument, Liana then went on to ask her if the scouts at the tower happened to reach out to her already. According to Colette, she did receive a letter from the Earth faction quite some time ago, and it seems like Liana was also headhunted by the Lightning faction, Ignore by the Fae faction, and Theon by the Flame faction respectively. That is maybe why Julius is quite pissed off right now, considering none came for him at all. Now the question is, why is that the case? But since that is not the problem they want to delve into for now, as much as possible, each of them wants to focus on the next stage. However, the absence of Will's presence started to click their curiosity. As it turned out, Will had finished the preparations one step ahead of everyone else. So right now, he is probably at Donan's place, and it seems like they were not wrong at all. At the blacksmith's shop, Donan went on to hand over Will his new sword. As soon as he got his hands on it, he couldn't help but be mesmerized by his new sword's purple blade. Considering Will has already got a special place in Donan's heart, the known blacksmith decided to reforge Will's broken sword, the Mariah's silver sword, and added a whisk called the Twin Season Jewel to it. According to Donan, with his new sword, Will could definitely cut magic like before, and the magic power stored in the center jewel can also be amplified, which makes its name Whist Twin Silver. With this, Will couldn't help but thank Donan for his never-ending understanding and unconditional kindness towards him. So, as an exchange for his time, Will incidentally pays for his new sword. However, it seems like Donan doesn't want Will's money at all. In fact, he wants Will to take it as a gift for saving everyone during the incident. For now, all that Donan wants is for Will to succeed in his journey to the top of the tower. Nothing more, nothing less. With that said, now that their preparations are already done, Will, together with the others, finally makes their entrance to the Grand Tower. As they got to the venue, a high mage was waiting for them. Since everyone looks raring and excited, the witch chaperone immediately welcomes them to the paradise of research and the hell of diligent study. Excitedly, everyone steps into a new chapter, but as soon as they got inside, they were a bit surprised at how dark and empty the inside of the tower was. But it seems like they were just at the doorstep. Using the access spell, the platform where they are standing starts levitating with the ceiling opening up. And just like that, they finally reach the first floor section of the tower, the colorless garden. Everything here is all white, with the sky and horizon looking all bright as well. On top of that, there are even floating castles everywhere, causing them to get even more surprised than ever, as it pretty much looks like this place doesn't feel like the inside of a tower at all. So to give everyone a heads up, the witch chaperone went on to inform everyone that this is the tower's first floor, also called by others the upper college. Outside of the tower primarily refers to the facilities on this one floor. It's a livelihood and production base that supports the tower from bottom to top. It is also the highest academic institution for research and development of new spells. It's a glorious realm for mages, accessible only to those who have been acknowledged by the Magic Academy. And whether or not one lives here permanently depends entirely on them. Since everyone here was the main guest of the day, the chaperone went on to tell everyone to head to the central ceremony hall, as everyone was already waiting for them there. Before heading to the said place, Liana went on to ask Ignore if this place didn't look foreign to him at all. Well, as it turns out, it doesn't at all. Based on the looks of it, Ignore can already say that this place is made by an L's phantasmagoric magic, and a frighteningly advanced one at that. In this state, they must have used an application of the Magnetress Ring, which is a large circular area of nature to create a vision of paradise inside the tower. As everyone looks around, it seems like it is more magical than they all think it would. A lot of people are wearing the same clothes as they are, and there are also a number of magic plants planted everywhere. This simply means this place is indeed at the forefront of magic research. But it seems like Liana has other priorities. As soon as she was able to see a crepe shop, she didn't even hesitate to order a bunch for herself. Colette then went on to stop her, and the group started laughing at Liana's sudden action. The light mood started becoming heavy as soon as Theon reminded all of them that they were still relatively new to this tower. So the gazes of the high mages were somewhat off. That is why they need to prove they are indeed worthy of entering this majestic place, no matter what. So for them to be able to do so, they immediately headed to the ceremony hall where Upper College head Cruz Harlan waited for them. To everyone's surprise, it seems like the head of the four great factions is also here. Now that everyone is already in place, Witch Chaperone Crayley went on to announce that in accordance with Magia Wenda's wishes, she would like to start the Blooming Festival right away. The chosen fledglings who were headhunted throughout the 6 years of the Academy, especially during the Grand Festival of Magic, will be bestowed the Blessing of Color. And just like that, Theon, Colette, Liana, and Ignore's Gloria changed into faction colors, and emblems appeared on their brooches as well. However, just like Julius, Will doesn't have a color at all, so this makes him wonder why. Well, as it turns out, Sarissa and the others at the top of the tower didn't allow Elfie at all. As a result, she starts throwing tantrums asking Sarissa the reason why. All this time, she put up with it because everyone said she couldn't do it, while Will was still studying at the academy. That is why she thought everyone would be satisfied by now, considering Will has already proved himself qualifying. Aside from that, Elfie also went on to express her sentiments on the fact that none of her love letters were sent to Will at all. As it turns out, Cruz was the reason why it didn't get through. It seems like Cruz doesn't want a mere sword to join a faction, since it would be a bit questionable. So as much as possible, he won't allow Will to be headhunted. But he did promise to recognize Will if he showed his strength and qualifications at the Blooming Festival. The tower is extremely meritocratic if Elfie were to headhunt him, and it would result in Will's reputation going bad. As a nonconformist, Will must first be recognized by everyone in the tower. Since Elfie also believes in Will's power, she has no choice but to simply wait for his arrival. Going back to the ceremony, those who are bestowed a color can immediately head to their factions, but those who haven't are now termed worthless. This means only those who have a color can go up the tower, and others cannot proceed beyond this point, which means they will be stuck on the first floor section. Hearing this caused everyone to get sad a little until they were informed that they would be given a chance. If they show off their abilities here, then there might be a faction willing to take them in. This event is called the Blooming Festival. Without even any warning, a monster suddenly appears, indicating the start of the event. All they need to do is defeat these monsters however they like. However, to Julius' surprise, none of his spells work on these monsters. As it turns out, the Guardians produced by the Tower Zuctonia are among the monster student mages who are impossible to defeat. The 2 shields they carry will repel any half-baked spells. But it seems like Julius was able to find himself an edge. Using his clone magic, he was able to dodge the monster's attack and was also able to land a hit somehow. Although the other factions start to get interested in him, it seems like Alfie doesn't at all. Aside from Julius, Will has also caught everyone's attention. Although it may look like he is running away the entire time, it turns out he was just observing the monsters from afar. Based on his observation, this must be the reason for the sad look on Alfie's face now. But it's okay since Will is willing to come to her with his own 2 feet. Since he has already observed every move, Will easily cuts through Zuctonia's shield like no other, causing everyone to be amazed by his strength. On top of that, thanks to the Gloria, which is stretchable and lightweight, it allows for great ease of movement. Aside from that, Donen's sword can also cut through anything as well. As Will does a great job on his own, Julius also tries his best to show off his skills as well. But Will went on to borrow some of Julius's magic to improve his own. And just like that, all of the Guardians got defeated in one go. As a result, Will ended up getting the faction's head's attention. So in the end, he was the only one who got a blessing from everyone, making him quite the show stealer. The fact that he is not even a Multos, which is someone who is a multi-attribute user, yet he received blessings from a total of 5 factions, does make him quite the man. When a person is bestowed multiple blessings, he or she gets the right to choose which faction he wants to join. As he was about to choose the path he had been waiting for, a voice unexpectedly interrupted the moment of blessing. Cruz stops the whole thing, saying that what Will does cannot be called magic. Although he understands allowing Will into the tower as a gesture for his feats during the attack on Terminalia. However, he is doubtful Will has what it takes to join any of their illustrious factions. Hearing this causes Alfie to rebut, asking Cruz if he happens to not have seen Will go a while ago. Cruz then didn't deny the fact that Will is indeed strong. However, accomplish he did not. For Cruz, all that Will did was merely guide another spell where he wanted it to go. So it is abundantly clear to him that, at his core, Will is not a mage, but a barbaric warrior. For Cruz, if even a scintilla of magical aptitude exists inside Will, he must prove it here once and for all. Since after all, this tower is dedicated to magic users only. So to test Will's limits, Cruz cast upon a spell to see Will's true capacity. Without any warning, another set of monsters appears in his eyes. What Will sees before him is a Walthus, a magical creature recently developed in the tower to suppress dwarven uprisings. All it takes to kill the gelatinous beast is magic. Even the weakest of spells will see it done. In other words, one cannot hope to defeat it without magic. With that said, how will he plan to defeat it? Although Cruz's ways are harsh, there is no doubt that what he is saying has some logic to it. As a Magia of Vander, Kariat went on to make it abundantly clear that the tower is the apex of magic. So there is no room for advancement for a sword that is bereft of it. That is why, indeed, this will be a great challenge for Will to conquer. As he went on to fight off the creature, it seemed like no matter what he did, it just kept coming back. But he knows to himself that every magical creature has a core. As long as he can find it, he still has a chance. However, it seems like Will didn't think it through. As it turns out, the monster's core has an electric discharge. Now that Will is in a desperate situation, the others are willing to help him with it. But before they can even lift their wands, Cruz stops them, saying that he is not assessing any of them, as he is putting Will, which he calls as a pretended, on trial. So technically what's happening now is an inquisition. So all the others could do now is wish Will good luck. As he stumbles one after another, Will tells himself that he can still do this. So no matter what happens, he will not give up just yet. However, for Cruz, Will's effort on his part would be a waste of time, since he is clearly unfit for this place. That is why Cruz just proposes Will to remain colorless and be placed under the supervision of the Upper Institute. The power of this was used to defeat the Dividende is extraordinary. It seems like Cruz is planning on studying Will in the Institute, unveiling his secrets, and using that power for the good of the magical world. As long as the mysteries of the fifth source can be unraveled and applied, it doesn't matter to him where Will is kept. However, it seems like Elfie would not allow such a thing to happen at all. She is now so close to losing her temper, which is why she was hoping Cruz will think about his decisions as much as possible. But it seems like Will still has the chance to prove himself on the next bloom, which will happen a few weeks later now. So they suspect nothing less than everyone's blood, sweat, and tears will be their acceptance. Those who did not receive honors today will do well to steel themselves for the next bloom, and that includes Will. Normally, the next bloom would take place half a year later, but the factions are in desperate need of new members after suffering deep losses at Terminalia. As such, this year's second bloom will take place a bit earlier than usual, so the generation of disquiet is looked upon with great promise. So the tower and the entire world expect that they will do better next time. Since there is no wrong move with that, Kariet the Magia Vander takes the proposition. After all, the only rule of the tower is to show one's worth. With that said, Cruz cannot disagree anymore. And with that, the charade is now over, and Will has another chance to prove himself next week. As the heads went back to the top of the tower, Will couldn't help but laugh a little, since no matter the circumstance, no matter the hole he is in, just as he thinks he had found a way, there's always something there to push him back down here. But as he remembers the promise he made to Elfie, he can't help but get a bit energetic, hoping things would work out for him. After all, for him, the world can push him down whenever it wants. However, he would definitely conquer every challenge thrown at him no matter what happens. Meanwhile, Thunder Faction Adjutant Guilford thinks this is all unexpected. So Zio, the Thorsius Fascia, Wand of Tower wonders what Gil is talking about. According to Gil, it is just that he assumed Zio would give Will honors since it seems like Will is the type he would go for. Well, it seems like that is actually the case. Since he has other ways of building character, Zio sticks with his beliefs and lets Will grow on his own. After all, nothing builds more character and strength than rising from the depth of despair. Now the only question is, will he be able to conquer this challenge or not? Well, it is just a matter of time indeed.